Okay, I'd like to bring the April 15th Planning Commission meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Could you please take roll, Ross?
I think we normally start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's
if
right.
you want to elect a commissioner to start with
Okay,
that.
let's give some time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Of course. Commissioner Fresco, currently absent. Commissioner Lambert, currently absent.
Walking in the door.
Oh, I'll loop back to her. Commissioner Landris.
Here.
Commissioner Reese.
Present.
Commissioner Wasserman.
Present.
Vice Chair Chaco.
Here.
Chair Hamilton.
Here.
And I'll verbally say that Commissioner Lambert is here as well. And Commissioner Fresco is also here as well.
Full house. No. All right, we're going to move to the planning director's report.
Okay, so your next meeting of the Planning Commission will be on May 6th. At that meeting, we'll be bringing forward basically a follow-up to the, what we call the first realignment plan, but the October 2025 realignment plan that included a key piece of that in there, a study session, really to initiate the process around strategies to focus housing development in the downtown, incentivize housing development compatibility along commercial boulevards with adjacent residential neighborhoods, and maximize potential city-owned sites in the downtown and Gateway master plan sites. So this will be the initiation of that direction that council gave in October. And there's also a vesting intent of parcel map extension at 1124 7th Street. May 20th is your regular meeting after that. Currently, we don't have any items, and I'm sure we'll be communicating to you about the status of that meeting. And then looking into June, our expectation coming out of that May 6th study session would be, a resolution of recommendation hearing in June, which could be the 3rd or the 17th. On the Architecture Review Board, their next meeting is April the 20th. There is an addition to a structure of merit at 123 Ocean Park Boulevard, a condo project, 23 stories, 124 units at 1514 7th Street, and then a development review permit, which is in the Bergamot area at 1655 26th Street, which is an 8-story, 401 unit mixed-use housing project. We wanted to make sure the commission was aware that the Landmarks Commission is holding a special meeting this Sunday. It's their Preservation Justice Workshop. This is really culminating out of the partnership between the commission and the Committee for Racial Justice. That working group prepared a report that was endorsed by council, and part of the commission's work plan, really the commission's work plan, is the implementation of actions from that. So certainly every member of the community is invited to that. There will be food, there will be drink, and really inviting everybody to come and connect and be part of the Preservation Justice Workshop.
I'm making chocolate chip cookies.
There you go. That's the reason. At City Council on March 24th was the update to the realignment plan. And that particular meeting really had a major focus on public safety, particularly the progress that our police department has made to date. There was a really good video. If you had a chance to view it, it really provides great context from, a public safety perspective, the great work of our police department, and also additional actions to support economic revitalization. So, again, and I think, really as our city manager described it, it's not, the realignment plan is not just a series of special projects. As we have moved into implementation, this update was very much focused on, how do we operationalize the realignment plan so it becomes, the standard way of doing business in the city. And then last night at the City Council, two items that would be of interest to the commission. One was an item around advancing major events. So last night, council approved 3 license agreements for the Pitchside Club, which is being put on by Michelob Ultra, and it aligns with the World Cup. And the second license agreement was the Golden Voice concert, beachside concert, that is slated in the fall. And then the third license agreement was the Nations Village, which is related to the Olympics, that is situated in a Crescent Bay Park. Probably just talk through, some of the, in addition to the license agreements, there were also some ordinance changes to support sort of regular community events, but also creating a new framework for the council to exempt these kinds of major events. They're temporary in nature. They don't perfectly fit our municipal code, authorizing the council to adopt a resolution to exempt these events from certain portions of the municipal code, and the city manager is given that same authority, subject to a set of strict findings. So the council adopted those resolutions as well. There were also updates to the sign code with respect to temporary signs across the city. Importantly, the council directed reducing the duration of temporary signs on the 3rd Street Promenade. Currently, it's 12 months plus an additional 6 months. They reduced that to 120 days to align with just, what is allowed for temporary signage citywide. So there'll be that consistency. And then finally, there was an appointment to the Landmarks Commission, and Carol Lemline, very nice to have her back. She has been appointed to the Landmarks Commission. So that concludes my report.
Question?
Oh, SB9. Sorry, one more thing, SB9, I missed that piece. SB9, last night, council also adopted, as the commission, last heard you made your recommendation, they did adopt the state law aligned SB9 ordinance, however, with the caveat that they did revert back to the 1,500 square foot guaranteed unit size, and also the kind of like hierarchy, of standards to be modified in order to effectuate that 1,500 square foot. They reference, the May 2025 direction, and it gave additional direction as well, that, when the a local ordinance on duplexes and lot splits returns, that it does incorporate that May 2025 previous direction. So staff will be returning, at a later date with that local ordinance, will be debated with the Planning Commission, and you will be able to make your recommendation on that at that time. Now that concludes my report.
Okay, any questions, Commissioner Landris?
Thank you, Jing. There was a rumor circulating of a special meeting. I was just wondering if there was that we were asked if we would be available toward the end of May, I think, about our availability. And I just want to note, I expect to be out on the 17th. So if it's the 3rd, fantastic. And that likely will be my final meeting. So
The May 27th special meeting that we did pull, you all will no longer be needed.
got it. Okay.
Josh?
Just a point of curiosity, did the city council look at any affordability numbers on the 1,500 square feet? They didn't come out of the planning commission, by the way. No affordability numbers, so they have no idea of the impact on the market or the income levels that would be able to, brilliant, okay, great, thank you.
Any other commissioner?
This is sort of a little on the side there, but you were talking about special events and making it easier for big one-time events to take place. And I was in the process of applying for a block party permit. And after filling out an onerous form, we got an email back saying this was step 1 of 11. So, we have a few other things to look at.
That is, appreciate that feedback, and we are in, active discussions with our Public Works team on actually precisely those kinds of permits, and, ways to make it easier for regular people to get those.
We got to hire some staff to help us do it.
All right. Commissioner Wasserman.
On our work plan was visit from someone in transportation planning this fiscal year. Is that happening?
You mean in terms of like just an up, I mean, we do have it on the list for a future meeting as just an update generally, or I'm not sure if you had something else in
I missed the work plan
mind.
meeting, but I think there was something about the bike, having staff come present to us on bike plans or something. I can.
There has been, yeah, in the past, we have had staff from the mobility team come and give a presentation to the commission on, status implementation of the bike action plan, ped action plan. Typically, we coordinate with them on a schedule. They've been directed by council to do a lot of things right now. They're pretty busy, so certainly that's on our list. And I think, we also want to make sure that it's a update that is, fruitful for the commission, timing wise and the like. So.
Okay.
Yep.
When they can make it.
Yep,
would work.
absolutely. Yep.
I have a question, and I might have missed it. Have we concluded the discussion at the city council about the Santa Monica Boulevard master plan,
You mean the safety study?
the safety study?
That is due to return to the council on April 28th.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Any commissioner announcements? Commissioner Lambert.
I'm going, as I've said before, I'm going to be gone all of May. What I didn't tell you is I'm going to Hungary and I may never come back.
So we're going to have 2 upcoming vacancies. Will there be 2 vacancies on the planning commission now? Okay. Commissioner Reese.
I hear Hungary's had a change in political spectrum these days, so good luck. Okay, I will not be here for the May 7th meeting. I'm out of town, I think it is.
The May 6th
May
one?
6th, whatever that is, so early May. And then this evening, I have to get out of here at 10 o'clock, so hopefully we can be as efficient as possible.
Understood.
Great. Commissioner Mosserman.
Yeah, I'm looking at the flyer here on April 18th. That's Saturday, 9 a.m. Douglas Park, the playground is reopening. So sharing that from Parks, super excited for that. And I brought some bags of popcorn if anybody wants them.
Okay. I think that concludes our announcements. We're going to move into item 6, public input. And, what I'll say is public input is permitted only on items not on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body. State law prohibits the body from taking any action on items not listed on the agenda, including issues raised under this agenda item. And we do have one request to speak. Mr. Feinstein?
You put in your actual name, you didn't sign in as Jerry in his honor. We wish him well.
It probably would have been more like Jerry Garcia if it was going to be me. Okay. Michael Feinstein, how you doing? So I'm here to talk a little bit about math and the Great Park. When I was on the council, when we did our last open space recreational park master plan, we had 113 acres at the time. And we set a goal of between 143 and 170. That's what we wanted to get to. Where we got to was only 144 after 30 years, 29 years. And at the time, there was low-hanging fruit. We knew we were looking at getting Fisher Lumber eventually and expanding Memorial Park, Civic Center over here and over here. Virginia Avenue Park, we put money aside to buy Plastic Mart property. That's where the youth center is now. That was the Plastic Mart. And a few others. And we barely got where we wanted to go. Now we made this new goal of 5 acres per 1,000 residents. And what our staff tells us is to get to that number, we need to add 292 acres. But we don't have low-hanging fruit the way we did back then, except for one big piece of fruit, and that's Santa Monica Airport. So the centuries, once in centuries opportunity to get that amount of acreage also is the only low-hanging fruit that we have a chance to get anywhere close to the 292. That's 192. That gets us 65% of us there. The folks who want to do otherwise there and pave over some of it and essentially extend Sunset Park into that want 48 acres. And the amount of housing that they want to do with 3,000 units, if you use the U.S. Census Bureau of 2.53 at 7,500 people, let's call it 7,000. That creates the demand for another 35 acres. So we would lose 83 acres at the very time that this is our only shot at getting us close. We really have to be thinking about that when we're weighing these things in the community. Also, there's this argument that, oh, this is the great place to do this housing because we already own the land. This land is worth billions of dollars because you cannot have contiguous land like that on the west side. It's impossible to get. So it really isn't inexpensive because we'd be taking something that would be available to all of the people in a non-commercial public space, open to people from all walks of life, and then just going for a very small number of people as well. So it's just important to put these numbers out there and realize when we are debating trade-offs, what we're really talking about trading off. Thank you.
I have a question, Michael.
Yeah.
And I've been meaning to ask this, so unfortunately, you're the person here to answer it.
That unfortunate?
Well, when you hear it, yeah. Where do you get the 5 acres per thousand? Because the state metric is 3.
The city approved 5 acres per thousand just on whatever meeting it was early March.
But I've seen it alluded, the state alluded to, and that's not the state metric.
The staff report at the time said that on a national level, 7 acres per thousand people is nationally where we want to go. Locally, we didn't go that far. We went 5 per thousand. So that's where that's become the municipal planning goal. So, you know, it was a unanimous choice by the council. And the other thing is that what is being proposed is 4 times the density of Playa Vista. Per acre, what is being asked for these folks who want to change at the airport is 4 times the density of Playa Vista.
But it's all affordable.
4 times. Well, in somebody's dream.
I know.
Fantasy.
I know. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 7, the consent calendar. Are there any commissioners that want to pull any items from the consent calendar? Okay.
Just curious why we're having deja vu, like flashbacks. We've been, is this just catching up on approving minutes, or is there something going on that
Very
requires
long
the production
backlog
of
of minutes that Ethan
Okay.
has been
Yeah, we're
chipping away at.
working through a backlog.
Yeah, okay. Just memory lane, you know?
Yeah. 6 years is a backlog, but we're working through it.
Thank you. Whoever's doing it, thank you. There's an AI
Ethan
doing
gets
it.
all the
Thank
credit.
you.
It's
Yeah.
all Ethan.
Okay, let's proceed with the consent calendar
Get a
approval.
motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Great. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now we're going to move into item number 8, the study session. Staff would come up and present. Thank you.
I could just yell. Okay. Good evening, commissioners, members of the public. I'm Anna Fernandez. I'm joined by Rachel Kwok. Together, we're going to be getting into the details of SB 79 that we briefly touched upon about a month or so ago. So we'll just get started because there's a lot to cover. Okay, briefly going over the agenda for this evening. As I said, we'll go over an overview of SB 79 and, you know, the ins and outs of just the standard law that comes into play in the summer. And then getting into the implementation options. There's 3 of them, which we talked about last time, but this is going to be more of an in-depth analysis and the implementation factors and the courses of action that Santa Monica will need to consider. Okay, so SB 79, as I mentioned, it will become effective automatically on July 1 of this year. Effectively, this will just upzone all of the parcels within a half mile of any major transit stop if the stop complies with certain requirements. The stops are TOD stops, or transit-oriented development stops. We're calling them TOD for short. They're classified as either Tier 1 or Tier 2, and the law does have lengthy definitions for each of them. It depends on their transit type and the volume. We have 3 expo stations in the city. There are the E-Line stations. They've all been confirmed to be Tier 2 stops. And then we've also included the Bundy Expo station because part of the radius of that stop falls within the city's jurisdictions. The law provides for guaranteed height, density, and FAR standards for eligible projects under SB 79. And again, that depends on their distance from a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 stop. It also provides additional concessions beyond state density bonus law, and I'll touch upon those a little bit later. Because of the wealth of information that this law and all of the considerations that are implied within it, we've launched a new webpage. We've included the address here, but I think if you just do a brief Santa Monica SB 79 search, you'll be able to find it. There's also hopefully a link that can take you to a larger version of the interactive map that's included in the website. It's right now it's kind of a smaller box, but you're able to punch in your address and zoom in and out as much as you want. But just there is a larger format of the map as well. I'll see if I can find. So I have it linked here, but it was a really long web address, so I didn't want to include it in the slide. But yeah, I'm happy to share it. Okay, so this is a snapshot of the map that we've included on our webpage. As I mentioned, there's all 4 of the stops that we've included in our analysis. This is a preliminary map. It's a draft map. SCAG is going to be releasing their map in June, and that will have rebuttable presumption of validity. So we're waiting to see what that one will look like. But in the absence of that map, we've done our partial or preliminary analysis as much as we can with the location of the pedestrian access points, which would be the adjacent to the TOD stop buffers, and then going a 1/4 mile and a 1/2 mile from the parcel of the stop itself. So for SB 79, there's a lot of caveats to be eligible for this type of project. Location-wise, it has to, as I mentioned, be within a 1/2 mile of the stop. The project cannot include any portion that's for transit or transient lodging. It has to be residential. There has to be at least 5 dwelling units. In terms of density, it has to either be the greater of 30 units per acre or the minimum density that's allowed by Santa Monica zoning, whichever of those is greater. The average unit size has to be at least 1,750 square feet net. There's also anti-displacement caveats, so it cannot be located on a site that with more than 2 units where the project would require demolition of rent control or affordable units occupied by tenants within the last 7 years, or have had more than 2 rent-controlled or affordable units demoed within 7 years of the application. There's also, of course, affordability. If there's at least 10 units or more included in the project, it has to be it has to include either 7% ELI, 10%, 13%. So there are caveats for that as well. Or it would have to comply with the local inclusionary requirement, which is our affordable housing production program. If that is higher, if it requires a higher or deeper level of affordability. And of course, with that, the rental units would have to be deed restricted for 55 years and the ownership units restricted for 45 years. If the project is over 85 feet in height, it would have to comply with labor standards as well. Okay, so the way SB 79 interacts with state density bonus law, it is a bit more permissive. There are the state density bonus law benefits would also be able to be coupled with SB 79. So the project may still qualify for density bonuses, incentives and concessions, waivers, modified parking ratios, the base density that's allowed by SB 79. In those development standards would be the base density for the project. And then, as I mentioned, they could qualify for up to 3 additional concessions beyond state density bonus law. A couple of caveats here that I want to highlight is that a project that has SB 79 and that's coupling SB 79 and state density bonus law could be eligible for up to 3 or potentially 4 if it's a 100% affordable project. So they could qualify for potentially 7 additional concessions if they were coupling both programs. And then in terms of local control, I've asterisked the waivers there because the city isn't required to grant additional height increases through state density bonus beyond what's permitted through SB 79. The option is ours unless it's a 100% affordable housing project. So getting into the guaranteed development standards, we did discuss this a bit last time. What we've done here is classified them either by tier 1 or tier 2. Again, it depends on the distance from the stop itself. So we have adjacencies within a quarter mile and within a half a mile. And we've highlighted the blue cells here because all of the stops in Santa Monica are tier 2. So as you can see, when you're going from adjacent all the way down to a half a mile, the height, density, and FAR gradually decreases as you get further and further away from the stop. In the second to right column, you'll see the minimum density thresholds that have to be met in order for a project to qualify for additional concessions beyond state density bonus law, and those are listed on the far right column. So going into approach 1 and 2, Rachel will get into approach 3 in detail. So as I mentioned, approach 1 will just cover all of the parcels that are within a half a mile of the TOD stop. That would be all of, the buffer zones that we've shown in the previous maps. And the city can adopt an ordinance that would mirror what's included in the law, but it's optional. Under option 2, this does allow a little bit of flexibility for the city. We can adopt an ordinance that would still be subject to HCD review and approval. But in that ordinance, the city can basically elect to exclude some parcels that would be upzoned by SB 79. So those would be if the sites are included in a TOD zone that has 33% of the sites offering 50% of the density provided by SB 79 and the permitted FAR, and then 75% of the overall TOD density. If the site already allows at least 50% of the density and FAR in SB 79, which would be basically our commercial properties. And then if it's located either in a very high fire hazard severity zone or within 1 foot of sea level rise. And then if they have a site that's locally designated with a historic resource before January 1, 2025, or if it has a site that's in the TOD alternative plan, which is approach number 3 here. So the TOD alternative plan is, again, it would be something that the city could adopt as an ordinance actually, or part of our housing element. This approach would still need to be reviewed by HCD. And there is a few caveats under this approach. Essentially what this does is the 4 zones that are included in the city, we could potentially transfer the units within those zones only. They could not be transferred outside of those zones to, say, north of Montana, for example. They would have to remain within the 4 zones. And then Rule 1 describes that we would have to maintain the same total unit capacity across all of the zones in the city in terms of the units and then the FAR as well. At the zone level, which is the entire buffer, we can't reduce the density by more than 50%. And then getting down to the sites, which is the individual parcels in the zones, the capacity can't be decreased by more than 50% or increased by more than 200%. Getting into approach 1 with more detail here. So the parcels that have 3 or more rent-controlled or affordable units can be are ineligible for SB 79. And again, we can adopt an ordinance, but either way, it will automatically come into effect on July 1. So we did some data analysis to see which parcels within those buffer areas would be eligible for SB 79. We've broken them down by the 4 stations here. So we've separated them by commercial zoned parcels and then the residential parcels. We've taken the total number of parcels at each distance from the stop itself, and then removed from there the ineligible parcels, which, as I mentioned, are the ones that have affordable or rent-controlled units, and thereby giving us the total SB 79 eligible parcels, broken down again by commercial or residential. So what we see at the very bottom there is the total eligible parcels at each of the stops. So these numbers, I want to clarify, they originally included parcels in the Pico neighborhood, but they're going to be revised based on the outlines of the Pico neighborhood that are included in the zoning code. We were previously using for this analysis a different map that included a couple of different census tracts. So the numbers here will likely be much less than they're showing here, but we're working on revising that and remapping that as well. Okay, and this table may be a little bit familiar as well. We went over this last time. This shows the SB 79 impacts on the various zoning districts that are contained within those buffer zones. Here we're showing all of the commercial districts. So what we're seeing here in the green column is the existing FAR and height that's provided for in the zones themselves. And then going further to the right, we're seeing the development standards that are allowed by SB 79. So if we're looking at MUBL north of the 10, which is here, the reason why we're seeing 4.0 is because 4.0 is the highest FAR that's allowed under SB 79. But as I mentioned before, there's different FARs that are provided for depending on the distance to the stop. We're just highlighting the highest standard in this table. So it ranges between 2.5, 3.0, and 4.0. So we've just included the 4.0 in this. And this is just a continuation of the same table. So yeah. Okay, so since we've looked at the commercial zones, this is the impacts that it would have to our residential zones. We have our 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, in the green columns, we're seeing what these zones currently allow for in terms of FAR, the maximum height, and then the density. And then moving over to the right, we've highlighted in red all of the text because SB 79 standards would effectively upzone all of these zones. So they would be the most impacted by implementation of the law. And then this slide shows most of our recently approved housing projects. The current density and the FAR that are in the commercial zones are actually larger or similar to what's allowed by SB 79. So again, going back to the previous slide, this is basically further buttressing the argument that the most impacted zones would be the R zones. So approach 2 would allow us to exclude certain sites until 2030 So the city here could adopt an ordinance to exclude certain sites, provided that they meet the following standards. The site is located in the TOD zone that has 33% of the sites offering 50% of SB 79's density. They allow at least 50% of SB 9's densities and FAR. They're located in vulnerable areas, as I mentioned before. And then if they're included in the TOD alternative 3 plan. So here what we've done is a bit of analysis to see which sites actually could be excluded until 2030 under Approach 2. We've broken it down by the 4 stations again and applied the thresholds and the rules included in Approach 2. So what we're seeing here is if we apply the number of sites with at least 50% of the SB 79 standards, how many parcels does that result in? Then the eligible SB 79 parcels. And then taking from there the percentage of the sites with at least 50% of the SB 79 standards. If we apply all of the thresholds in Approach 2, as I mentioned, we have to comply with all of those standards in order for any of the sites to be excluded.
I just have a quick question. On the Expo Bundy, I'm assuming that's the north part of Sunset Park. What does no mean?
Right, yeah, I was just about to explain.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jump the gun.
Appreciate the transition. So the reason why we've mentioned no under Expo and Bundy is because it doesn't meet all of the criteria that the other sites do. So they have to meet all of the thresholds that are included here, which is why we're seeing yes on the bottom row for each of the other sites. Yeah.
Does those numbers change when you reevaluate the Pico neighborhood based on a different geography?
No, this table does not. But what is in question here is that Expo Bundy, just so we're clear, we've only included parcels that are within the city's boundaries. There's a large part of Expo Bundy that is outside of the city of Santa Monica boundaries that's in City of LA. So we're not counting those parcels, and so that is a question that we will be asking HCD is whether or not how we treat those other parcels that's in the city of LA.
Can we sell them our density?
So yeah, so just going back, I'm going to do Approach 3 in a second. Just going back to the highlighted green text, Commissioner Lambert, you asked, what does the no mean? It means that the no means it doesn't meet this green highlighted standard. So the site has to be located in the TUD zone that has 33% of the sites offering 50% of the density and permitted FAR. So if you go forward here, 81% of the sites, it meets the 33. 81 is about 33. So it's 67, 62. Right. Expo and Bundy does not meet the 33% threshold, nor does it meet the 75% capacity threshold, which is the 75% of overall TOD density. So, and that's largely because, as I mentioned, because so much of the Expo Bundy TOD zone is in the city of LA, and we're only.
Count that.
I don't know if we can or cannot. We are seeking guidance from HCD on how we treat those. When you read the strict letter of the law, it just says within the jurisdiction. And so we're unclear about that. And so for now, we have taken this approach.
So does this require action if we?
This requires action from staff to get clarification.
Okay. No, I mean, if it turns out if we have to upzone because of this before the housing limit.
Yes, I mean, we will want, we're hopefully going to get
We would
clarification.
have to make a recommendation. Yeah.
So moving on to Approach 3, which is the TOD alternative plan, that's basically allowing us to transfer density capacity across one site and another or across TOD zones. As Anna mentioned before, we cannot transfer it to anywhere else outside of the TOD zones. So all of that capacity has to remain the same. And so that's where rule number 1 comes in, must maintain the same total net zone capacity across all TOD zones. So we have to, so in this, you'll see, and in the staff report, you'll see that we've analyzed what the total net zone capacity is. It's about 250,000 units. We need to make sure that that 250 stays the same, even if we're moving capacity around across those zones. So, and the second rule is that any TOD zone, we cannot reduce the density by more than 50%, meaning that if TOD zone for the downtown is at 45,000 units, we cannot go below 22,500. So while we can shift density around, we can't just shove everything on one site. We can't shove everything on one TOD zone. Same rule applies with the site at the site level. While we can reduce density, the SB 79 density, we cannot decrease it by more than 50%, and we can't increase it by any one site by more than 200%. So take R1, for example. Let's say the R1, one site has a capacity of, let's say, 20 units. We cannot reduce it by more than 50%. So therefore, 10 units we must allow because we cannot reduce it by more than 50%. And there's also another caveat in that the state law is clear that no matter what we do, for Tier 2, for any parcel that's located within a Tier 2 TOD zone, the minimum FAR that we could ever reduce it down to is 1.0 FAR and 30 dwelling units per acre. So at the very minimum, all these parcels have to have at least a 1.0 FAR. So this is illustrative of those rule number one. We've taken the liberty to roughly kind of calculate what the capacity is with SB 79. So this is representative of total net zone capacity. Total net zone capacity is basically SB 79 capacity minus what's actually on the ground in terms of existing units. So when we did that analysis, we found that, every single one of these zones has a very different range of capacity. You have 44,000 units in downtown, and then Bergamot has 135. Largely because it's a big, that area has a lot of larger parcels, higher FARs and things like that. So, so for rule one, for example, let's say we want to take some capacity from Bergamot, 2,000 units, and shove it over to downtown. We could. We just can't ever get below half of 137,000. So, as an example. Okay, so I mentioned the 251,000 units. That's an estimated capacity, the net zone capacity. So no matter how much we play with the capacity, we have to make sure across all of those 4 zones, we keep 251,000 units. And then so for rule 2, any one zone cannot be reduced by more than 50%. So in your staff report, when there's a table there that has like the 50%, that just means that we cannot move capacity such that all of the capacity is reduced by more than 50%.
May I ask a question?
Right.
I'm sorry, just can you go back to that slide? So if in the zone 4 where we're below what SB 79 is already, that's with the SB 79 zone.
This is SB 79.
Right.
It's
So
minus, or existing units minus SB 79 capacity.
Right. So we could, in theory, if we wanted to, even though it's a very low number, we could still go down by 50%.
You could, yes.
I don't know. I'm not suggesting I want to. I'm just trying to understand because.
Right, but subject to the rule, as I said, you can't reduce any site by more than 50%. So
Right.
there's a lot of
So
things
it's
that
not
play
different
here.
for that zone because that's the main zone where we're not up to code, up to SB 79 code.
So you can move the density around to another zone, but you just have to follow these 3 rules. So,
All right.
yeah.
We'll have other questions later, but when you say moving units, right, moving around, are we allowed to be more specific within a zone? Like Bergamot, when you talk about having large parcels, if you look at the circle, yeah, it's all of Bergamot area plan where we're like build, but then it's also longstanding multi-generational families on Delaware and Exposition and other places. Can we meet the unit count for that circle, but push within the circle toward the parcels that have capacity?
And that's a very technical question. We would have to, when we come around to doing the TOD plan, there will be a lot of an analysis of whether or not we can do that.
Okay. That we don't have to bring an act, like.
Yeah, but at the very least, you cannot reduce any site capacity by more than
Right, but if you
50%
look at the site
subject to these
capacity in
rules.
Bergamot, for example, I would argue that 80%, like, without even bringing the scalpel, 80% of that capacity is north of Olympic because you've got those huge parcels there, right? Just starting the conversation, most of that capacity is not by the metro yards. It's just not, right?
Yeah.
So does HCD understand that? That we're not putting high rises next to the freeway, but we are putting high rises.
Commissioner Landris, I mean, I think what we're trying to, today's an informational session, we're explaining the rules. You know, this is a very high level, like, dirty piece, you know, if, and to be clear, like, council hasn't given us direction to do, you know, anything with this, right? So, but if we did receive that direction, you know, this is honestly like to the scenario 3, it's a very highly technical study in terms of many rules, you know, so I think, you know, it's not that we don't want to answer these questions. We are honestly unable, and we would not want to offer, you know, an incorrect answer without having actually gone through all of the rules.
No, but
you
that's
know.
very helpful because it helps me calibrate
Absolutely.
what comment I would want to offer
Mm-hmm.
coming out of the study session. Because if you knew the answer to that question, I would say one thing.
Yeah.
Since you don't, my comment is likely to be, please study it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, no, and honestly, like, you know, to understand, like, oh, can this geography go over here and that? I wouldn't, you know, we are not in a position to affirm, like, yes, absolutely, that's going to work, you know.
And I'll just want to say real quickly, I think the staff is nearing completion of the staff report. So let's let them finish and then we can.
I know there was a lot of
come in with
questions. I'm almost done. I think there's only one slide which talks about the last rule, which is this. It's the site capacity. As I said, the last rule is like, no matter what we do, moving capacity around, we can't reduce any one site by more than 50%. And it has to have a guaranteed 1.0 FAR and 30 dwelling units per acre in terms of density. So these are the questions that are being raised are very good ones, but they're very technical ones. And until we get into parcel by parcel analysis, it's very hard to give you a straightforward answer because, I mean, I think what SB 79 doesn't really do is actually also look at what our current standards are. You know, it doesn't see what's on the ground. We have so much in development that, you know, that's already been permitted. You know, it doesn't look at that. It doesn't care about half of the sites in downtown have already been permitted or something. No. So this is all very high level for now because this is the best we can do at this point. So this is just, again, going over the net capacity. I mentioned how that is calculated is taking the SB 79 capacity, subtracting the existing number of units. Nowhere in this table under approach 3 does it talk about permitted capacity, which is how much are we actually zoned for. That comes into play in approach 2. Funny enough, it's very different. You know, approach 2 cares about permitted capacity. Approach 3 doesn't. It cares about net capacity, which is the SB 79 capacity minus existing number of units. And so very different rules at play depending on which option you're choosing, right? So this line at the bottom of this table just reiterates what I was saying about reducing the capacity of any one zone, which is the threshold, the lowest you can go, basically. Lots of questions, so.
Before we jump into questions, can you put table 7 from the staff report up on the screen?
Yeah, can you do
that's
that,
possible.
Ethan? Sorry. Oh.
I'm asking because I think it illustrates a really interesting point that I think will help all of us discuss.
Sorry, there was a lot of tables, so we did not include every
It's
single
on
table.
page 12.
The exclusion analysis by station, the yes.
Oh, was it in this slide deck?
It might have been, yeah. I
Oh,
think
I'm
it was.
sorry then. Can you go back to the PowerPoint then? Okay. Whatever is easiest. Okay, it's the exclusion. I don't know the table numbers by hand. This one?
It's actually not exactly that. Yeah, it's table 7. It does have the yes, no at the bottom of it, though.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
here it
okay.
is.
Yep.
You know, I think it's an interesting, I just want to draw everyone's attention in the room to it. It's an interesting analysis because it looks at, if you look at 4 lines down, permitted capacity under existing zoning, and then SB 79 capacity. it's interesting, they are right on top of each other.
Right.
But for the Expo Bundy node. And so, what that says to me is when we did the fifth cycle housing element, the Planning Commission, and I was on the Housing Commission at the time, we were very intentional about trying to build more housing, more units to meet our RHNA goals. SB 79 seems like a huge earthquake, but in reality, the city was already there. The big difference is how those units are distributed. And the big difference is that at the city level, we decided to use the boulevards and commercially zoned properties to absorb all of that capacity. And we preserve the single family home residential neighborhoods and PICO, albeit each of us were on different sides of the opinion about SB 9 and other, ways that we were densifying single family home neighborhoods. But by and large, the city decided that we were going to take on a lot more housing capacity along the boulevards. The difference is under SB 79, that distribution is completely different now. And so the commercially zoned properties, the height and the density and the FAR that the city has already approved is part of SB 79. There's very, very, very strong overlap on the commercially zoned properties. The big impact is on the residential owned properties or the residentially zoned properties. And I think that's probably going to be the nexus of the conversation that we have is how do we approach the residential zone properties via what SB 79 is mandating? So is that a fair way to set the table?
You though, actually in general, if we have zoned currently to meet SB 79 standard unit counts, why would we have to do any more than that?
That's a very good question. I was thinking that as the whole time I was reading it. I mean, Santa Monica has already basically met the standard of SB 79.
In terms of capacity, can I interrupt for a second?
Right.
So in terms of capacity, SB 79 doesn't care if you're a residential zone or commercial. It just says if you're this distance, you
understand that.
And so in terms of capacity, we meant it. So yeah, but we can't, because SB 79 also has these other rules on top, which is you still have to guarantee the 1.0 FAR. You can't reduce SB 79's capacity by 50%. Even though our standards completely meet the capacity threshold, it doesn't really matter in the guise of the state laws.
So what that means, R1 would have a 1.0 FAR.
We're going to move into questions. We're in questions and discussion now. That's okay. Okay, sorry. Commissioner Lambert, you were speaking.
By what you're saying, does that mean that FAR for R1 would be 1.0?
At the minimum.
Okay, I got it. Well, that's 1123.
1.0 FAR, 30 dwelling units per acre is the lowest you can go with the R1.
Got it. Thank you.
So I want to come back to, you posed a question to us, Chair, about whether that makes sense. And what I wanted to flag, without getting into item 14A, is that I did some further work on my thing that's coming later. And I just want to point out that if you take my plan and put it into if you do a density of 1 unit per 800 square feet, you get 30 DU, which makes it SB 79 compliant, which means you can get the way I wrote it, we could talk about it later, but you can get to SB 79 density in a residential type form in a way that pencils. And so I want to flag that works with approach 3, which I'm quite taken with because I'm very concerned about displacement. So I just wanted to put a pin in that because I can't talk about 14A until we get to 14A, but there is an SB 79 plugin that solves for R1 and R2.
Right. Well, one question I have, and it follows on that, but I won't address 14 directly, but no matter how we move the dwelling units into the different neighborhoods, the underlying height density in FAR on the residential parcels remains unchanged. Right? I mean, it remains SB 79 standard, no matter what. Yeah, but so we can move dwelling units, but what we're not able to change is the height and density, and this is a question, height, density, and FAR ratios as mandated by SB 79. Yeah, so that all stays the same, or consistent with SB 79. Okay, all right, we're in questions now, Commissioner Chaco.
Thank you. My first question is about the process and timeframes. Approach 1 obviously can be done very expeditiously. I wanted to
Needs to be done with that at all, actually.
Right. So approach 2 and 3, I just wanted to understand better, starting with 3. Given your understanding of the scope of work involved and the type of analysis involved, what is the feasibility of accomplishing that prior to July 1st?
I mean, we don't have council direction yet, so it's hard for us to give you an answer, but I don't believe that we have the capacity to do anything before July 1st, given we don't even have council direction. We haven't presented this to council. So, yeah, I mean, there's no direction given right now.
So it'd be accurate to say that with approach 3, there's going to be some interim period where
Right.
SB 9 will take effect while you work on it.
Approach 3 can be implemented anytime. There's no timeline for implementing approach 3. In terms of, you could do it as part of the seventh cycle housing element, or you could do it
Right.
3 years from now.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if we do approach 3 now, we would have to redo it again with the 7th element. Is that correct? It would have to be revisited at that time.
I mean, I don't necessarily know that answer because our policies can change, and I believe our planning manager wants to chime in on
I
something.
do want to just also add, even if we adopted something tomorrow, it still has to be reviewed and approved by HCD. So
Right.
there's no way to make July 1, even if we did something tomorrow, just given, I believe, Rachel, it's 120 days HCD has to review and approve.
So once the council adopts something, it's 120 days for HCD to come back and give us comments and determine whether or not it's compliant, meets our standards. And so, yeah, I mean, we can't make the July 1st deadline. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we don't even have council direction right now, so.
Right. I don't know if you have the answer yet, but I was also wondering, I thought I understood that even if we were to take approach 1 and adopt something, maybe not by July 1st, but let's just say July of next year, as part of the 7th cycle, would we not have to go through that again? Or some version
Well,
of
we
that
would still
again?
have to do the housing element again. The 7th cycle, there's no escaping that. But whether or not you're saying the TOD plan needs to be redone, I think it depends on what we do for the 7th cycle housing element. I mean, we may change our strategies, we may change our policies. So I can't answer that because we haven't gotten our arena yet. So, yeah.
So with approach 2, that also requires HCD approval, right? So is there
Correct.
some level of feasibility of accomplishing that prior to July 1st?
I mean, there is a shorter timeline for approach 2. With this analysis, it shows we can kick the can down the road until we're ready to do approach 3, which is what City of LA has done. They've done their approach 2 analysis to say, hey, we qualify for exclusion until 2030. Approach 2 is meant to be a stopgap, like, hey, give us a break for now, because we're already zoned for enough capacity until 2030 when we're working on our 7th cycle housing element, so we could give a more thoughtful approach to how we meet the SB 79 capacity. So approach 2 is what essentially LA has adopted. It's a hybrid. It's approach 2 until approach 3 gets kicked in. So
I see. But by taking action before July 1st on approach 2, you would be able to exclude certain sites in the interim?
we would be able
without
to exclude all the TOD zones except for Expo Bundy pending HGD, guidance on whether or not we can include other parcels. But yeah, we can basically punt it until later.
Well, it's basically off to the races, right? It goes into effect July 1st.
Correct.
The sooner the city can adopt alternative 2 and then subsequently put together a transit TOD alternative plan and exclude certain parcels
Right.
at that point in time. But until that, during that interregnum period, any developer can bring in
Yes.
a project under SB 79 and anywhere within that half-mile radius until there's a TOD alternative plan in place
Or until we adopt approach 2.
or approach to.
Yeah, but again, as planning manager, Mr. Furman said, it's, you know, it still takes time. The ordinance needs to be adopted, 120 days for their review as well. So again, until, you know, I can't give you a timeline of, but unlikely that we'll be able to put something in place until July, before July 1st. But, you know, we can at least.
If it happens this year, that would be great.
So
Commissioner
I have
Landris.
2 technical questions, and I accept that you may not know the answer to them. Michelle, you and I emailed about them a little bit. Rachel, you and I emailed about them a little bit. I want to get them on the record so that we understand what our options are. I'm going to start with a question that I think was maybe asked by somebody in this room, which is, given the intensity of the transit stop, do we know via SB 79 that we can, well, that is to say, does Big Blue Bus now control our zoning? I'll put it that way. In other words, if they decide to intensify transit, or if Metro decides to intensify transit on the Expo line, could that backdoor change our zoning with no public hearings, no resolutions, no staff study, no public process?
I think it's helpful we were looking at this earlier. There's a definition of, you know, what a TOD, what a major transit stop is in HCD's guidance. That part is quite clear, like what is, and what it involves is existing and planned stops in the RTP, right? So this is a plan that SCAG adopts for the region. That is not an evolving thing. It was adopted in 2024. It is, you know, what it is.
Yeah.
With respect to planned stops, it says, I'm paraphrasing, but, you know, it has to be basically like committed funding in order for that to count. And it has to be stops that were in there prior to January 1, 2026. So, you know, in terms of future stops, if they are not in that RTP, they would not, you know, affect the eligibility of this bill. I think that with respect to, there are bus stops in the city where potentially frequency of service may change.
Yeah.
And that piece is, I think we would want to see clarification on that, because it's very clear about future stops, you know, that were not in the RTP. Like that part is very clear. We can't create new ones. But for existing stops, you know, where frequency of service changes,
What I'm concerned about.
I think it is a little ambiguous.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just name it, right? The D line's going to open, and you could see an intensification of the R lines, right? Of the rapid lines, Pico, Santa Monica, potentially a rapid line on Wilshire, that could create an intense, you know, a sufficiently intense transit stop. There's good reasons for that, right? In terms of getting people to the D line terminus. But what we don't want to have happen in Santa Monica, and I think what we need to do is establish, I mean, I'm not going to get into discussion, but I'll have a recommendation there. So let me get to the second question, which is.
And just on that point,
oh, yeah, sure.
I will say that that's one of the issues staff has identified is reaching out to HCD on.
Okay.
And that's something that staff is planning on doing in the next couple weeks.
I mean, I think because of the way our Big Blue Bus is structured, and because we're serviced by bus lines outside of our control, I think I want to raise the concern that there are significant challenges with being, like, Metro could upzone us without our involvement, and that feels bad.
The Tier 2 TOD stop is defined, and that's a light rail or a dedicated bus lane.
Well, I'm talking about, like, what happens if that's God forbid we think about the future. But next question, more pressing. We talked about this, and I'm hoping that you'd be willing to study it. I have fair housing concerns about conflict of laws and disparate impact from intensification of the density in the Pico neighborhood. And I think there is a substantial possibility that that SB 79 may be asking us to do some things in the Pico neighborhood that directly contradict what we were directed to do by the law, the Constitution, and the NHCD with respect to our housing element in terms of protecting that neighborhood from displacement. Even in the R1, there are multi-generational, long-tenured homes of families that have been here forever, and we do not want to displace them, right? So my question is, to what extent could the staff study the conflict of laws and reserve the city's rights, potentially to mount, if needed, a very targeted challenge to the law in order to protect those neighborhoods?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, just to level set, affirmatively furthering fair housing and the state and federal fair housing laws, they are going to be applicable to any sort of development that comes out of this. So our office, the city attorney's office, has actually already highlighted this issue for our consumer protection unit. And we have specialists in our consumer protection unit who deal with fair housing law issues. But as you've heard from staff, there's a lot of unknowns with respect to how this is going to be implemented within the city. So obviously it's something that we're going to have to take a look at further when we have additional information. But just so you know, it's something that has been highlighted for our office to take a look at.
So just to be clear, in terms of us giving recommendations post-study session, it would be appropriate if we wanted to flag one or both of those issues among many others to ask you to pursue them and to ask council to direct. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you.
That's right. Commissioner Fresco, you have your light on. You have a question?
I
Okay.
do. First, I just have to echo what Commissioner Landris said, because I feel like we obviously worked really hard to achieve this while affirmatively furthering fair housing and protecting our vulnerable people. So that is a super important thing. And now to bring up another aspect of our culture and our ethics, which is not just about the people, but about our city as a place, and the fact that this only allows us to exempt landmarks that were designated a year ago, which leaves everything that gets designated after 2025. What's up with that? And what can we do about it?
You can exclude them as part of their TOD plan or as part of this,
If
as long as they're on the commercial zone.
If we do, as long as they're on.
Or sorry, not on, as long as they're already, if they're on a commercial zone, they automatically qualify for exclusion. And also the alternative.
After January 1st,
Yes.
2025?
Yes, you can exclude those.
Oh, okay, because it says in the rules, and it only mentions.
Well, I say that because any commercial parcel already meets that criteria for exclusion. So.
Oh, so they're, so if they meet the criterion for.
So, for example, Santa Monica commercial zone parcels already allow 50% of SB 79's densities in FAR. So logically, if they're on a commercial zone, you can exclude them under approach 2. And then also under approach 3, you could also exclude local, reduced the density by more than 50% except for local historic, cannot reduce. So you could technically use approach 3 to also reduce the capacity of it on a local landmark, even if they're after January 1st, 2025.
So let me just understand, I mean, in theory, zoning capacity and a landmark don't necessarily have to be in conflict. You can preserve a landmark on a site
Right.
and build a lot of stuff. So when they say that they are excluded or not excluded, does that mean that we're excluding them from the upzoning, but we're not excluding them from consideration in meeting the standards and all that stuff?
Under approach 2, you could exclude them from the upzoning. Under approach 3, you could reduce its capacity such that it matches ours, our underlying zoning.
And all landmarks, even one that we might designate in a month from now or whatever, would, if they weren't designated when we adopted scenario 3 or option 3, would they still be protected? Would they come into exclusion because they were designated? Or do they not get excluded from the upzoning because?
It would apply until you adopt exclusion under approach 2 or approach 3.
So adopting the exclusion is theoretical and we don't have to name all the parcels that.
No, you do have to name them.
So if we get a new landmark, I'm still not understanding.
Yeah, so with approach 2, you actually have to have a map that shows which parcels are excluded. And the parcels that can be excluded under approach 2 will work through approach 2, just approach 2 for now. Approach 2, let's say it was designated on February 1st, 2025.
Right.
So it's not protected. SB 79 kicks in, subject to SB 79. We can choose, if it's on a commercial zone, it's already zoned for 50% of SB 79, so we can actually just exclude it under approach 2.
What I'm asking is if we adopt the scenario in December 2026, and then we designate that property in January 2027,
Yeah.
then it's not excluded.
No, I see what you're saying, after we've done.
That's what
Okay.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
understand.
no, the law is very clear that we have to have a map showing specific sites.
So is there a way that we could, for example, project that typically we landmark 3 properties a year or 5 properties a year? Could we leave blanks?
No, you have to
has
identify
to be
parcel by
ident-
parcel, site
And
by
so what
site.
about could we use parcels that are listed on the HRI?
You could, and that's another possibility, you could.
Okay. So we would have to really,
I mean, our understanding of the process is that in the future of that, you would end up updating your TODL, if that makes and go through that same review cycle per the rules in the statute. You know, anything a local agency does to adopt an ordinance related to SB 79, whether it's approach 2 or 3, you have to submit, that
Correct.
ordinance showing your work, to HCD. They go through the 120-day review cycle. So it doesn't mean that it's not eligible or what have you. It just means that you could update it in the future to add that site. But to be clear, you have to name the site.
Right.
There is no provision to just be generic,
Yeah.
about that when it comes to the historic properties.
I see. All right.
Yeah, it will ask you to submit a map showing the specific sites where you've excluded them and where you've moved capacity around.
So in the residential zones, if historic resource is not excluded from upzoning, it's still subject to Landmarks Commission review and Secretary of Interior standards at the new SB 79 zoning.
Our local historic preservation laws still apply.
Right,
SB 79 doesn't
Making
override
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
My parents called me Jake. Ethan, if you could pull up the HCD implementation memo. But while we're getting there, I guess a really key question that's informing my thinking is preview comments. I want to put density on Colorado, right on the train. Why isn't there density now? We saw the table that has basically we're at SB 79 density. What explains why most of that is still industrial, car dealerships, warehouse?
Yeah, I mean, our FAR standards and our density standards are already pretty significant there. It's just a matter of desirability on the part of developers.
Do you think that if we do a TOD plan, removing density there beyond this, that would tip the balance such that housing would make sense there?
I think this chart shows that our densities already are aligned with SB 79.
Right.
Yeah.
But you said you can go 50% down and you can go 200% up. If we were to say we're really going 200% up,
really up zone?
well, in order to do the 50%.
I mean, I will tell you I don't think that's with state density bonus law, FAR and height is not an issue in our commercial zones, really. I mean,
I think if you were, I think what you're asking us to speculate as to why, Colorado Avenue hasn't redeveloped into mixed-use housing from the existing uses. And I think, what we have seen and we understand is actually that corridor, and this is not anything that the city did by any means, it has become the natural landing ground for a lot of creative businesses over time. We do not own any of that property, right? Private property decisions, why people sell, lease, redevelop, those are many, many thousands of millions of decisions, in the city, for whatever reason, Colorado Avenue, it continues to be an attractive area for a lot of creative industry, creative businesses. A lot of things, they look very nondescript from the outside. It was definitely something that we saw when we worked on the Loose, and it's something that has continued over time. But again, not due to any policy lever that the city did or didn't do. So I would be very reticent to say that, oh, we supercharge it like that's going to be the thing. I just think that would be very speculative. And, at the end of the day, as an organic living city, there's a space for every use. There's a reason, there's demand, for those kinds of spaces, why people choose to locate in a city. There's many, many factors that go into that, and I would not assume that every single property owner is looking to do housing. I think that's, really probably the best response we could give,
Super useful, thank you. So Ethan, if you could pull up the implementation memo on page 3, you're gonna get mapping questions from me. Bus service, this was talked about. Tier 2, bus service meeting the standards of that section of the code, and then that section of the code is quoted, full-time dedicated bus lanes or operation in a separate right-of-way with a frequency of service of 15 minutes during the morning and afternoon peak periods. Broadway and Santa Monica are full-time dedicated bus lanes. They contain pre-existing major transit stops with intersecting routes. Why are they not on your maps?
Again, the map that was produced is just for they're preliminary, exploratory. We, are still trying to get clarification from HCD as to what actually counts as a TOD stop. So, we will continue to update that map once we get better direction. From our understanding is that SCAG is working on their map. It should be out, May, June. And so, I would rather not say definitively whether or not that is a transit TOD stop until we see SCAG's map again, because their map will have, it will be the one that holds up in courts. And when someone fights us, it's going to be the SCAG's map that wins.
Sure. I just think full-time dedicated bus lanes or is pretty clear. But yes, I mean, I just want to be careful that we're modeling this as a nice 4 circles, but I don't think it actually is. And I think that's actually probably a good thing because those downtown stops on Broadway and Santa Monica also give us places to move density. So the law says that SCAG's map is presumptive or rebuttably valid. Mm-hmm. If you don't think it's right, do you intend to rebut?
I'd leave it up to the attorney on that one.
I would say that would be a policy decision by council as to whether we wanted to go down that process. Typically what that means is if there was a challenge to whatever development, that map that SCAG has created is sort of the standard. It's what the court will lean on. It'll be up to whoever is challenging that map through litigation or whatever to show that that's not, the presumptions that are made in that map are inaccurate.
Great. And then if you could pull up the text of 79 itself. Thanks for doing AV here. On page 4. Right. The big thick paragraph there, transit-oriented development stop. So I just want to perhaps clarify Sean's question. We got this question from the public. So a stop counts if A, it has full-time dedicated bus lanes, and it already exists, or B, it exists and it's in the RTIP, which is basically the 5-year set of funded projects, or it has a route selected. But at the end there it says, when a new transit route or extension is planned that was not identified before January 1st, 2026, those stops shall not be eligible, et cetera, et cetera. I guess the question I got from the public was like, and I know you don't know the answer to this, but to pass it on to HCD, is a bus rapid transit project, new bus lanes on an existing route. It's not an extension, it's not a new route. Does that count or not? And I know you don't know the answer, but yes, that I think that's the gist of the question, because I know I've already gotten inquiries about Lincoln BRT. I don't think that counts now, but when an alternative is selected and when it's funded, it might. And then last question is a quick one on the affordability requirements. So you said it was, let's see, developments that are building more than 10 units. If it's under 10 units, do they have to follow AHPP or no?
Well, our AHPP kicks in at 6 units.
Yeah, so does 79 supersede that or no?
I'm sorry?
Does 79 supersede?
I don't believe so. There's nothing in the law that says it supersedes
HPP just applies
inclusionary.
as
Right,
is.
correct. Yeah.
Great, that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Reese, you haven't asked a question yet.
When you go ahead and you, in option 2, and you protect these areas, how long is that protected for?
Do you mean for option 2, 2030?
Until 2030. And
Right.
then are you required to offset the density in that area somewhere else or it's just
It's just a straight up exclusion. So basically kicking the can down the road for the 3 zones, and then maybe Expo Bundy pending clarification from HCD whether or not it qualifies. But as Commissioner Hamilton had said, we're already meeting those because of the rezoning we've done as part of the housing element. We meet all of the criteria for exclusion for all 3 of the zones. That's within our boundaries.
I understand that, but I'm just going to tell you from my perspective, I've been on the commission on and off since 2007, and I have pushed for density within a quarter mile of transit since I started, and I don't want to give up on this opportunity here to say that we're just going to go ahead and waive the SB 79 within the quarter mile. So I'm trying to figure out how we can work around keeping density in the quarter mile while also protecting people in the outer ring. So the next question is, can we protect people in the outer ring of those areas, but still keep density or even increase density in the quarter mile?
Yes, to a certain extent, that's where the TOD alternative plan comes in. Again, you can move the capacity around, but it just has to be subject to those 3 rules. And so, like I said before, with the residential zones, we may never get below we can never get below 1.0 FAR and 30 dwelling units per acre for the residential.
I'm not
So-
I'm not upset about that. I know we have to maintain that.
Right.
What I'm trying to do is, I know there's a big desire for
And so-
not to
Right.
have displacement. But when I look at these quarter miles circles, most of them don't go into heavy residential areas. I think that's not totally true on 17th Street when you head to the north a little bit. But the quarter miles are very, they're small areas, and it just makes a ton of sense. And this is something the state has tried to get at for years, and we have an opportunity to do it. And the first thing we're trying, and I hear we're saying, is let's not do it. So I want to try to triangulate us to put more density in the quarter miles.
Yeah, and that's where the TOD approach 3 would come in, the TOD alternative plan, moving that capacity around back to the quarter mile.
So I know it's early in the process, but is there either ors here, or do we say we're going to go option 2 and we're going to protect all these areas, and then we're going to go through a TOD plan as option 3 and take our time doing that? Because it's going to take time.
This is a discussion for tonight. Again, you are welcome to write, your policy recommendations to council, and, ultimately, they'll decide what to do. But yeah, you're more than, because tonight's just a study session for discussion purposes only, you can write a letter to council with policy recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, Lambert.
Commissioner Chaco had his light on earlier. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Just a follow-up on Commissioner Reese's question, just to make sure I understand, with option 2 or approach 2, we could choose to temporarily exclude any or all sites within the 3 eligible zones. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we
Until
could choose to
2030.
carve out, based on some criteria, some portion of the sites
Yes.
within those 3 zones
Yes, you
to
could
be
do all of
temporarily
them.
excluded.
Yes, all of them or some of them until 2030. And when I describe what City of LA did, that's basically what they did while they're working on Alternative 3, the TOD plan.
Right. That 2030 date is to give cities enough time to create the TOD alternative plan to really figure out how they're going to accommodate SB 79.
Correct.
So that's why that date was put there. So I think it makes sense. I mean, anyways, Commissioner Lambert.
It's actually when the 7th cycle starts too, is
And it
2023.
lines up perfectly with the housing element.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, Jim, I was just looking at the map, and the R1 in Pico north of the 10 is in the quarter mile. Well, I have a tiny map.
Yeah. There are parcels of R1 in the quarter mile, yes.
It's
When we
that
did
little
the
neighborhood
analysis.
on Delaware and those streets that are in
It's
Pico.
right next to the park there.
Yeah, exactly. Ishihara, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are parcels within the,
It touches on one parcel. It touches on one single family parcel, maybe
Really?
2. If you look at this, I mean, look, it's right there.
I would say most of that Expo Pico R1 neighborhood is actually within the half-mile
Okay, sorry.
radius.
I'm sorry.
The green blob.
it's actually a harder map to see, but there are some single unit just in the tip of the R.
Right, there's like 2.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah, and we're working on updating the zoning map interactively online. There's just some funkiness going on right now online.
I'm
so.
not finished.
And just for the public though, online, there is a map that you can blow this up and down and you can.
Okay, thank you. I was working, what? I was working on a small map. That didn't help.
Do you have any other further questions, Commissioner Lambert?
Yeah, but then I want it back.
Okay, you get it back.
Have to stop with the conversation.
No, we're not talking, I'm asking for permission to follow up on Commissioner Reese's point to Commissioner Lambert's question,
Well, if this is
which is that,
questions.
I know, but we had a letter from Carter Rubin asking about the placement of the entrance, and your point, his point isn't just about 17th, it's also about Bergamot, and I was wondering whether the placement of the entrance and the exit to transit affected what the quarter mile was. That was all.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if you move it 20 feet, the buffer's going to go 20 feet the other way. I mean, again, like we put a giant disclaimer on our map saying it is
that's-
exploratory.
The map
because,
is
Correct.
rudimentary. And so let's not
Yeah.
get too into the map at this point.
Right.
Worried about that neighborhood. Thank you for all your responses today. I mean, you guys were amazing. I asked a lot of questions that were answered. But I still am confused about the concessions and the affordability. AHPP takes precedent over SB 79, right?
No, they work in concert with each other.
Well, but we satisfy SB 79, is that correct? Except for the extremely low.
I think it's more, since our HPP has a deeper or higher level of affordability, it kind of trumps.
It doesn't. We don't do extremely low.
But we do, I don't think you have to provide all of them, but our 15% VLI, where we hit the 5-5-5 split, I think our understanding is we believe our HPP supersedes
Okay.
SB 79.
Well, I hope so, because theirs is ridiculous.
No, SB 79 is clear that if our HPP mandates a higher level of affordability or a deeper level of affordability or a higher percentage, they have to comply with our local HPP.
I was just concerned
So-
because we don't have extremely low anymore.
No, we don't. And so that is a question, like SB 79 does not specify, how many extremely low income units you need to provide to
No,
qualify
it's a
for these.
percentage.
Well, no, it just says you can comply with that, but it doesn't say for eligibility in terms of concessions. It's unclear about that.
Well, as you
So-
know, we dropped extremely low years ago.
Right,
because
yeah.
Developers were
And
taking advantage of it.
And so under SB 79, it kind of adds it in. And so the question is, we don't know how to interpret this given our HPP doesn't allow doesn't provide the extreme.
The idea that they could be eligible for up to 7 concessions, that would be if they did a density bonus and our AHPP, right?
It'd be if they did bonus on bonus, under our HPP, because under our HPP, we're giving, our local density bonus, we give you the maximum three.
Right.
Bonus on bonus with AB 1287 gives you the fourth one. So that's 4 under state density bonus law / our HPP. And then the 3 would be for SB 79.
And then
so.
in addition to those concessions, they still have unlimited waivers, except for we do not have to approve a waiver for additional height. SB 79 does not require that.
They don't even have to bother to apply. I mean, they can just start building, you know. I have a couple more questions, just a sec.
Sorry, Commissioner Lambert, if I can just add
Yeah.
to your, the question that you've highlighted is actually one of the questions that we are going to be posing to HCD as well, because as you can see, it's just saying that you get additional concessions if you're providing for extremely low-income households. It doesn't say how many. And so that's part of our question to them, is to clarify,
So you
or
do
does that
one
mean,
unit, you know.
yeah, does it mean that if a project just provides an ELI income house or unit, do they automatically get 3? It's ambiguous.
Very confusing.
Yeah.
Also, and I didn't write down exactly what the reference was. We talked about mandated parking ratios. We don't require parking, so how does that?
I think that slide was just pointing out what you could ask for under state density bonus law. Obviously, in our case, it wouldn't
Right.
apply, yeah.
Okay. You so thoroughly answered all my questions today. I have nothing left. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, and I want to turn it over and hear a comment from the public. I'm looking at page 15 in the staff report, where it goes into some conversation about, for example, in the Bergamot neighborhood, the ability, and this is in terms of moving dwelling units from one zone to another. It says that Bergamot has the ability to transfer 70,000 plus dwelling units into other zones. But there is an underlying, within Bergamot, there exists already about a capacity for 138,000 units and I asked you this question, Rachel, over email. There already exists 138,000 unit capacity within Bergamot. And SB 79 allows for 70,000, a transfer of 70,000 of those units. So does the $138,000 unit, I talk too much, I work at a bank, so I talk too much about money. 138,000 dwelling units, does that standard remain, or are we effectively downzoning Bergamot when that transfer is made and Bergamot is then left with 70,386?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Essentially, it would be transferring density, so it would be making the development standards and capacity lower. So it is, in effect, down zoning, but, it's because you're moving density around. So it is moving that 138 that's already there, you're reducing it down to 70. So that is essentially.
So we're taking 138,000 dwelling units in Bergamot, and we're down zoning Bergamot by 70,000 units by transferring
You're
it.
saying taking this 138, which is our permitted, and then we want to transfer density to the downtown, to the downtown, but we still have to keep that 70. Yeah, so 138 is bigger than 70. So, yeah.
So
it would be
138,
essentially-
that standard still remains.
No, it wouldn't.
Okay, so it doesn't. So we would effectively be down zoning Bergamot.
Correct, yeah.
By that
Well,
transfer.
sorry, we wouldn't exactly be down zoning because this is more the standards that would be applied for SB 79 projects. Someone could say, I don't want to do an SB 79 project. I want to do a normal project.
yeah,
under
you're
your
right,
zo-
yeah.
Under your
Correct.
standards, which got you to the 140.
You're right, yeah, that's
So
a
it's
good
not
point.
down zoning, it's more limiting the applicability of SB 79.
Yeah.
But you could still just go do another project because our heights and FARs are locked in through the housing element. So we can't go below those
Yeah.
Okay.
to start
So
with.
then in that case, there would be no reason to pursue the SB 79 route. Yeah.
Okay. So we could, Well, I guess gets my earlier question. So what's the benefit to Bergamot by us transferring 70,000 dwelling units to another zone if the existing $138,000 standard, 138,000 unit standard remains?
I think that's like a question it's a policy question, whether or not you want to do that.
Yes, Commissioner Landris.
I think the question is from where we are transferring it. Because this is what I was asking earlier. Because if HCD will let us transfer it from those neighborhoods that are at displacement risk, but preserve it where Mr. Rand was selling us a huge podium under 4 towers that now apparently will reach the sky, cool, right? Like, we're happy to have that density north of Olympic. And so if it's if it's 137,000 units north of Olympic and 1,000 units south of Olympic, cool, we're done, right? But we have to know that I'm being right, but we have to know that HCD will allow us to bring a scalpel and not an axe.
Well, I know, I guess it goes back to my earlier comment is that Santa Monica has already done a very good job of increasing density. And so we're already meeting SB 79 density under existing zoning. So if we go through this whole exercise of moving dwelling units from one zone to the other, that doesn't actually, you can still, as a developer, still use the existing zoning to get to the exact same number of units. So what's this exercise going to lead to? It's all on just moving. I just want to be clear that like we can be moving units into the different neighborhoods.
I think, again, you've got to zoom out, right? Like, this is a law, and, you know, the law provides an opportunity for a process, if you will, you know, to kind of figure out, you know, how it's applicable. But, you know, as you said, right, the standards, and we provided the comparison of the standards, you know, someone will look at this and think of it as a toolkit. You know, it's another tool in the toolkit, right? If the city of Santa Monica provides the same thing and a process and what have you, you know, someone will take a look at the expansive and say, well, what assuming they find a developable piece of property, they'll figure out the one that works best for them. Right. But this whole exercise, you know, under SB 79 is really providing a process, the math, if you will, of like, well, if, you know, and I think the greatest impacts, as we shared with you, is going to be in the residential neighborhoods, which we didn't touch in the housing element, right? That's where you're going to see the biggest delta between SB 79, you know, and the city's local base standards. To be clear, the city's base standards are not changing. We are not changing those. What we're talking about is about the applicability of a state law and how it might be used, and the process by which the bill provides, you know, to figure out how that could be used. It doesn't change, it doesn't downzone, it doesn't reduce the capacity on a base level. It's just in relation to the bill.
If Santa Monica hadn't already upzoned, then the transfer of these dwelling units from one neighborhood to the other.
And it might be very meaningful.
More meaningful.
And you do see that unfolding in jurisdictions around us, you know, and it applies to the whole state of California, right? Not everybody did the things that we, you know, well, most, you know, most areas of, you know, state of California, but, you know, every jurisdiction will be a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think from a developer's perspective, I think it is going to be a different tool in the toolbox. There's multiple tools in the toolbox now for a developer to pursue a project. But what I'm trying to do is look at this from the perspective of the stakeholders here in Santa Monica, that there isn't, no matter how we move these units from one neighborhood to the other, the high density FAR ratios under SB 79 remain the same. And also the number of units going into these different neighborhoods isn't necessarily going to change. It's just going to be what tool the developer uses to pursue a project, whether it be the city or SB 79 or SB 1120, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, the concerns we've heard, the questions from the community, the questions from the commission, you know, it really does seem to distill down to like overall, we've always, you know, tried to focus development around transit around our commercial areas and really preserve our neighborhoods for good reason, right? So, huge amount of our rent control housing stock there. There's concern of displacement. None of that is brand new. And that's very much, why in attachment D, we highlight the standards difference between an R1, R2, R3 parcel, to call attention to that, right? Because that's where we as staff do see the biggest impact, the biggest potential delta between what SB 79 allows, and what our base standards currently are.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any, let's wrap up any questions? I think we can wrap it up now and move into public comment.
I just want to get clarification because I'm slow.
Sure.
If I understand it, R1, the FAR is now 1.0 or will be 1.0.
At the minimum under SB 79.
Right.
Yes.
So all the R1 areas, even if they're not 1123 projects, will be 1.0.
Well, depending on how many units,
No, go ahead.
Depending on how many units are provided in an 1123 project, so 3 to 7 units gets a 1.0 FAR.
No, I know that.
And 8 to 10 gets a 1.25.
I understand, but SB 79 is saying all R1 lots are 1.0.
No, not necessary. You can have a site right now under SB 79. It could be 3.0 because if it's within the quarter mile, right? It could be 3.0. What approach 3 says is you can reduce that capacity of a site by 50%. So if it was a quarter mile, it's 2.25, right? 2.25, and you could reduce it down to maybe but the most you could reduce it down to is 1.0
That's my point.
FAR.
And there's very little R1 in any
Right.
of this anyway, so there's just the Pico and the northeast. Sunset
There's about 200 something odd parcels
But most of it's Sunset
within
Park.
the Expo Bundy Station TOD zone.
Exactly, okay. But the FAR will become 1.0.
If they choose to use SB 79 and we adopt an alternative TOD plan.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to now move into public comment. If I could ask Maria Loya, Scott Kelso, Harvey, I can't read your last name, Harvey, and Adam Gibbert to please come forward. Oh, and one more, Jacob, no, sorry, just those that I named for now.
Good evening. My name is Maria Loya, and I'm here representing the Pico Neighborhood Association. And the Pico neighborhood, as many of you know, is the most diverse neighborhood in the city of Santa Monica by race, income, and generational diversity. And what this means, what this law means to the Pico neighborhood and the Pico residents is that the mass demolition and the construction of high-rise housing will dramatically change our neighborhood, right? It will increase displacement, right? By increasing the market pressures, it'll force the displacement of long-term renters. The construction alone of these high-rise housing units will cause urban canyons. Essentially, a lot of our residents will lose the sun, right? They will lose absorbing and enjoying the sun in Santa Monica, essentially changing the character of our neighborhood. We're concerned with all of this. We've voiced our concern year after year. And we also want to take a moment to thank the planning commissioners who have taken our concerns and have implemented protections that are now at risk with this law. We ask that you incorporate some protections, strengthen the anti-displacement measures by incorporating a right to return for some of these residents that will be displaced. We're also concerned with the mom and pop owners of these apartment buildings, which this will cause most likely a land speculation, right, by the banks, essentially getting a lot of these mom and pops out, right? And we know that a lot of the mom and pop apartment owners are the ones that house long-term rent-controlled tenants. And so this is concerning to us. So we would also like to ask you to extend some protections to some of these mom and pop apartment owners as well. What it seems to us is that aside from, we would like the city to challenge this under the Fair Housing Act, right? But absent that, because we know that that right now might be difficult for the city to sue. So we are looking at approach 3 as one of the ones that could help the city and the Pico neighborhood residents really understand what we can do to protect long-term renters. So thank you very much.
I have a few questions.
Yes.
It's nice seeing you.
Thank you.
How's Oscar?
Yeah, he's doing well. Thank you for asking.
Rent-controlled properties are exempt from SB 79, so that offers some protection for Pico. Clearly, we have to do more, because I'm worried about displacement and gentrification as well. We all have been for years worried
Yes.
about that. So anyway, thank you for being here. I had a question, but I can't remember what it was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Maria? Sorry, I had a question. Sorry, thank you.
No, that's okay.
If I'm not mistaken, there are some projects already underway in the Pico neighborhood that are affecting the, so could you just tell us what those are for the record? Because I think they may not be SB 79 projects, but SB 79 only intensifies the use. So am I correct that there are 2 SB 1123 projects pending in the neighborhood? On Delaware?
Just one.
Just the one, right?
Yes, yes, and so our concern is that we understand that rent control apartments are protected, but we're concerned with the market pressure that this construction will create, right? And it will then force other residents to be pushed out. That's our concern.
So my point is, in asking this, is that
Yes.
SB 1123, which is less intense than SB 79, has already generated one project.
Yes.
So are you saying that if SB 79 sort of like gets implemented with no changes, that it's going to be even more projects than what we're already getting?
That's exactly what our concern is.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I wanted to flag.
Yes,
Thank
that
you.
is exactly our concern. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for pointing that out.
Thank you. Scott.
Hi, good evening. I'm Scott Kelso. I bought a lot in 2001 on 21st Street, and I'm within the half-mile radius of the Bergamot station. And when I bought my property, the lot is 7,500 square feet. The house was built in 1914. Back then it was just a little cabin. People could change their bathing suits, go to the beach. And, oddball additions have been made, and, to keep it code compliant. Well, anyway, one of my first thoughts was, okay, let's bulldoze this. And I had the zoning for R2 then was 5 units. I could have put 5 units there. But instead, I just, and I love the neighborhood. And so I decided to fix up the place. And, and with regards to Maria Loya, and there, at some point in time, the gentrification controversy arose, and the R2 there was downzoned to 3 units. And, oh, gee, that's great. Well, my property value just went down. And I don't know why gentrification gets such a bad rap. Basically, if you're going to zone restrict development, you're basically telling all the landowners there that we're going to, suppress your land value. Every owner of property there, families that have been there for generations, whatever, what a potential purchaser will, the supply and demand is what determines the price of things. And potential purchaser is going to say, well, I'd love to buy here, but I can only build a shack here. I can't build an apartment building. That's going to determine the value of the property. But anyway, this whole, the SB 29 state mandated, legislation, I think not too long ago, there was a state mandated zoning requirement that the city didn't respond in time, and a whole bunch of developers jumped on it and immediately were issued permits because by right, they were issued permits for big developments, and somehow or other that got rescinded. And I'm just wondering if this is going to be the same situation. You know, July, that's no time at all to, consider all these weighty matters and come up with all the, figure out all the intricacies of the zoning. And now I hear this young lady here mention a date of, 2030. Yeah, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I do. You said that you were interested in developing up to 5 units. What size units, out of curiosity?
Well, it would have to comply with the FAR and the setbacks and.
No, but let's say you could do whatever you wanted. What would you have liked to have done? Were you looking to do townhomes? Were you looking to do small
quite frankly,
cottage apartments? What was your vision for your development on your property?
Well, that's a wide open question. Let me put it this way: if I was a wealthy individual right now, I would build a beautiful single family home there. Okay. And occupy it.
And what about what would you want to finance if you were just trying to make your property work?
Well, I'm 75 years old, and I'm worried about my heirs.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with the property? I would like, my current, what I'm working on is I've got, it was a duplex. So I've got 2 units, but I haven't had a renter in there since, when I first bought the property. So I live there alone. And there's a 2-bedroom house in the front and a 1-bedroom unit in the back. And I was considering maybe I would occupy the 1-bedroom unit and maybe either rent or lease out the front house.
Okay.
Or maybe, do a, what do you call it, Airbnb type thing.
Okay. No, I hear you. I'm not going to push it. Stick around for 14A.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just wondering whether
Sorry, your time is.
Is it?
That it beeped. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I asked you a question too.
All right.
Okay, Harvey. Harvey here, okay. Adam Gibbert.
Hi, my name's Adam Gilbert. Sorry, that's my bad writing.
Oh, yeah. Missing an L in the...
There we go. It's okay. I'm a resident of Santa Monica, second time living here. I'm an asset management and development consultant. And when SB 79 was being prepared, I had reached out to some of my clients and said, hey, would you be interested in a development project? And I ran the numbers for them, and profitable, but not relatively that they were interested in investing. And the biggest problem is the land values are just so high. And so to comment to Mr. Wasserman's comment about Colorado, a lot of the commercial properties, the land values are so high because the density there is already so high. And so those folks are probably going, why would I go through the headache of development when I'm already getting a pretty good return on the existing occupancy? Can't talk for every, but generally speaking, that's why. But SB 79 could work with like a duplex that's maybe a 2,000 square foot duplex, like the gentleman's property over there, on a 7,500 square foot lot. All of my clients have said, hey, Adam, go do your own project, proof of concept. So I'm out there looking, and it's right now there's not much out there. And look, a lot of the costs with this deal are outside of the city purview, but I think there are a couple of issues which I'm hoping the city could focus on as they look on implementing SB 79. One is I understand their development fees. If there a way that it could be prorated, especially if you're building, like for me, I would love to build 1,100 square foot, 2-bedroom, apartments or condos that could be, I hate to use the term Sean, I think used in his, of workforce housing. If you could maybe prorate the development fees based on maybe the price of the units or the rentals of the units, that would help give some comfort. the other issues I think you saw is like anything over a triplex, anything over a duplex isn't eligible. So the vast majority of the lots in the SB9 areas aren't going to be eligible. But for the ones that are, right now, at least from my experience, they're not penciling. And so the other thing I'd hope the city could do is, can you transfer that density from, say, a fourplex that has rent-controlled units, allow that property to stay, but that owner could sell some of that density to another property within that zone and to create a project that actually could pencil. Therefore, you'd protect the rent-controlled apartments, you'd give a little bit of upside to the property owner who realizes that they can't take advantage of SB 79, and you create a development opportunity that actually pencils. The other thing is to get to these 2.5 or 3.0 FAR, the existing setbacks, and again, I'm looking, my world is just a 50-foot lot, a wide lot.
Thank you. I have a question.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you. There's three of us here. Anyway, so you'd like to build 1,100 square feet. What sizes are you open to?
For me, the projects that I've been sort of modeling would be in a 7,500 square foot lot, 19 units, 6 stories. That's in the 1/4 zone. 3 would be designated affordable.
Yeah.
And they would probably range from 600, 700 square foot 1-bedrooms to probably 1,500 for a 3-bedroom. That's about, because you physically can't get bigger. And that was my other comment. Thank you for the question, which was work with the fire department on the existing setbacks in R2 is 8 foot. There's no way you're going to get anywhere close to the FAR that's allowed. So either A, someone's going to come in and say, screw you, city, I want a 3-foot setback on all 4 sides to achieve my FAR. Or in the ideal world, the city would come up with a fire department approved, concessions on setbacks on the side and especially the front to allow the developer to get to that identified FAR. That's the 2.5 or the 3.
Okay, I'll also say stick around for 14A, but
I'll do the best.
But I really want to hear. I think I want to hear more about how would you sell density rights? It's like selling air rights.
Yeah.
So and we've talked about. I think we talked about in the housing element the idea of selling density rights in order to protect areas that we wanted to keep lower density. So can you say more about that idea?
Sure. Part of me would say is maybe it's not even a 1-for-1. Maybe it's a 2-for-1. If you buy, 5,000 square foot of entitlement square footage, you can build 2,500 extra. My view is that that would be an asset. Okay, the money would go to the existing property owner. You as the developer, you own that, and it should be within a certain. Maybe it's within the zones of some sort, but then it becomes real property. And I hate to say it because I'm a development consultant, but real property, it'll be taxed. So if you don't implement it, you're going to be paying property taxes on it. And because you want to motivate, you don't want to be speculators out there. Again, I'm shooting myself in the foot professionally here. But you don't want speculators out there buying this all up. It really should be able to be bought only by somebody else who owns or is under contract with another property within the zone. So it wouldn't be like, oh, some third company can just be buying the entitlement right and putting it in the bank. And
you could tie it to the application pipeline. You could say the only people who are eligible to purchase the density are people who have a pending application to do something and require the extra density, and launch a 60-day period where it's like, hey, does anybody want to sell X density?
Yeah, I would like to think that people could go out there proactively and knock on doors and say, hey, could I buy this? And say, look, but I can only close on it until I have an active project. But they can't just buy it and sit on it. I think that would be unwise. Again, my other comment there was just about the fire department of getting setbacks. And basically minimizing the design and construction risk. Because for a small project like the ones that I'm looking at, a 30-month project provides a very different return than a 40-month project. And for the large projects that you see on Lincoln and whatever, where the land values are a very small portion of the overall project, they can cover that. But for small project, you can't.
Thank you. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to call we had 4 late chits come in. So I'm going to call Jacob Pierce, Heather Thompson, Nicholas Wilsey, and Michael Feinstein.
I'll move we accept the late chits.
Second. Okay. Jacob.
We can do a roll call. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, Chair Hamilton, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Jacob Pierce, here on behalf of Abundant Housing LA to support the delayed effectuation of SB 79 implementation only on those 43 eligible historic sites. We think you may also wish to pursue objective design standards that don't preclude development but would otherwise further Santa Monica's pedestrian-oriented character. We would support that. But most importantly, I'm here to respectfully urge you to otherwise fully implement the state bill. The stats: high rent, expensive home prices, significant rent burden in Santa Monica. One thing I'd like to highlight when it comes to SB 79, the staff report notes that a developer may not demolish a rent-controlled complex larger than a duplex for an SB 79 project. So that means even in neighborhoods that may be home to relatively dense existing multifamily housing, the bill still affirmatively furthers fair housing by focusing development on sites that have little to no displacement risk. Therefore, a robust implementation of SB 79 will create more housing options in Santa Monica and take that pressure off properties that currently house working class families. So we support a targeted exemption of the 43 verified historic sites. As I mentioned, this is a balanced approach that safeguards cultural and architectural resources while still unlocking significant zone capacity. And lastly, we respectfully urge you not to pursue any deferrals based on existing capacity in transit-oriented development zones. This is essentially a combination of options 1 and 2, going to help Santa Monica meet the needs of its residents and community members while furthering badly needed progress on housing and environmental goals.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Heather Thompson.
Hi, good evening, commissioners.
Can you hold on just a second?
Absolutely,
I'm sorry.
sure.
We're having a conversation in the middle of the room back there. Can we? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Heather Thomason. First, I just want to thank you all commissioners for continuing to be such a thoughtful group of people. I feel like most of my questions got asked. Some of them got asked because when I asked them in a comment, you guys actually read the comments and then asked the questions. So I really appreciate that. I won't cover the ground that some other people have covered, but I did just want to make the comment that when this bill was, when the council raised their hand to invite this bill in the first place before it was passed, and then when it actually passed, there was some conversation that this wasn't really going to change things much. This is a really dramatic bill, as we can see, even if we have this kind of density. And I just think it's really important for the public to understand how dramatic it is. And I really look forward to this commission making their recommendations and hopefully our council adopting them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nicholas.
Hi there. I'm Nicholas. I'm a planning student at UCLA, and I live right on the edge of Santa Monica. I just wanted to point out what Commissioner Wasserman had noted earlier. There are 2 clearly Tier 2 bus stops located in downtown Santa Monica and 4th and Broadway and 4th. From the HCD guidance, the qualifying bus service TOD stop is a location where the bus stop is adjacent to a full-time dedicated transit lane, and the average bus service intervals across the combined morning and afternoon peak periods is 15 minutes or less. On Santa Monica Boulevard, 2 blocks of consecutive bus lane. On Broadway, 4 blocks of consecutive bus lane. Both of those stops are served by Metro Route 4, which coincidentally enough has headways that are exactly 15 minutes. So I would really urge the commission and the planning department here to investigate those. Looking to some peers, the city of LA has been very liberal in including some stops on the planned North Hollywood to Pasadena corridor, where the bus lane is really only a block and a half long. Those have been included. ABAG in Northern California, the SCAG equivalent, has also been very liberal in including bus stops where it's only 1 block of bus lane, but during that bus lane there's a bus stop and that's included. If that were to be implemented in Santa Monica, that's including up to all or part of 24 new blocks, primarily north of downtown. A lot of those are zoned R2 right now, north of Wilshire. And so I would hate to see the city get caught flat-footed when the guidance does come out and these 2 stops are included, because by all metrics and looking at some of the peers, they definitely are.
Thank you.
Thank you,
One
Nicholas.
question.
Yeah, just want to acknowledge that, I mean, for disclosure too, that I'm a UCLA Luskin Senior Fellow, and this is my mentee, so I'm really glad you're here. I just want to say thank you for the comparative data, because maybe it'll help staff chase it down. So,
yeah, definitely. Cool. Cheers.
Thanks. Michael.
So I wasn't planning on speaking on this, but when you had your discussion about the definition of a transit stop, it reminded me that just in the last couple of days, as I was scrolling through TikTok, the Streets Blog California feed featured a study co-authored by Commissioner Wasserman talking about the definition of a transit stop could actually be modified. And it concludes that after extensive mapping of the data, the UCLA team claims that if government bodies were to consider the area surrounding bordering location owned by the agency or city that surrounds the boarding location as the transit stop, it could add more than 1.3 million acres of land statewide where housing bonuses would apply, nearly tripling the amount of land currently eligible. UCLA calls this the maximal approach, and it suggests that municipal governments actually could adopt a different definition. I'm not saying that you should do that, but I thought that it was very relevant discussion that could be going on in the state and could change over time. And maybe Commissioner Wasserman, who knows a lot more about this than what I learned on TikTok, you might want to add that during your discussion later, but I just wanted to bring it up.
I'm always glad that academic research gets read. I guess the secret is TikTok. Just to be crystal clear, though, the report we did was on major transit stops, which do things like get rid of parking requirements, not SB 79. We are applying for more money to map SB 79, but that stat is just for major transit stops, not SB 79.
Do we have any major transit stops?
Oh, plenty. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole map that you can see on the Santa
Well,
Monica
there you go.
website.
So, all right. Anyway, I just wanted to add that and enjoy your evening. Thanks for your contributions. Bye-bye.
I just want to also add, I believe I saw Commissioner Wasserman's name in print on the front page of the LA Times a couple weeks ago. All right. Yeah. Okay, so that concludes public comment.
Can we take a break, please?
Sure.
Or I'll just leave.
Well, I think I want to get through, I want to take a break, but I want to get through SB 79 conversation. If anyone needs to excuse themselves for a minute or two, that's fine.
8:15 we start again? It's 8:10. Can we? Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's get, we've already had a lot of good conversation about SB 79, but this is guidance from staff is that the Planning Commission come up with a set of recommendations that will ultimately go into a letter to council. Our understanding at this point is that council hasn't asked to hear SB 79. So maybe a good recommendation would be that we bring this to them with our recommendations in hand. Yes, sir.
For the sake of speed, I'm going to make a motion that is like super amendable. But for the sake of getting something on the floor, I'm going to move that we recommend, if we can, a two-track approach, that we adopt approach 2 immediately, with the caveat of Commissioner Reese's question about whether we can sort of allow the more intense use inside the quarter mile, but protect the half mile, while we at the same time develop our approach 3 to replace it. And so that's part 1. Part 2 is that we ask staff to formally, I think we're all on the same page about this, formally ask staff to investigate not only the locations of the major transit stops per bus, but also whether or not we get upzoned by a totally outside agency against a charter city if Metro decides to increase its headway, or if the Big Blue Bus decides to increase its headway because it's legally, as an enterprise fund, operating independently of us. That's number 2. And number 3 is that the staff investigate the disparate impact on the Pico neighborhood with an eye to protecting those neighborhoods that we have struggled to protect, and explore the constitutional and legal and general law conflicts that may arise from applying both SB 79 and fulfilling our obligations under affirmatively fair housing. Thanks.
But I have a question. When you say alternative 2, meaning we would actually be working on the Bundy Expo area that is not up to par with SB 9079?
Right. I mean, if we don't do anything, it's going to go into effect. So let's protect the ones we can protect. In the meantime, Bundy's that's going to go no matter what we do.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So we would implement SB 79 in that one little corner of.
We have to. I think we're being told that we don't have a choice.
Okay, cool. All right.
That's right.
Yes,
I just have one other little question. Ms. Loya brought up the idea of right to return as part of this, and is that like
Be friendly if you want to ask to study it.
I would just be curious if that has anything to do with this, if there's a way we can, what you described it as, this is an opportunity for somebody to consider a possibility of a maybe thing to do. So.
Honestly, that's outside the scope of the state law. That being said, however this concludes tonight, it sounds like the commission, there's a motion on the table, and if there's the votes to carry forward that direction, what we would suggest at staff again, because this is an informational.
It's friendly, so we'll incorporate it, to study it.
Yeah.
To study the right of return.
I think what I was getting at is how you communicate this. So, we would ask that usually you have like appointed someone to write that letter to the city council, and you probably want to talk about how you want to communicate that. You can include, that sort of like in addition to these SB 79 things, we want you also to consider this right to return idea. So
I think
Mr. Lambert.
It was not meant to be.
Jacob had his.
Do we want to talk about historic preservation, or is that?
We do.
What do you want to add that to the
What do you
motion?
want? It's friendly to me.
I want to ensure that all existing landmarks up to the moment we adopt whatever option we adopt are excluded.
You want to study that?
Well, my recommendation is that would be part of our recommendation.
That we seek
To
ways to
city council.
exclude.
All existing historic resources, landmarks and historic districts.
What she said.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wasserman.
Yeah, 2 things. One, I like approach 3. I want to do approach 3. I don't like approach 2, mostly because I don't see the point, in part because we're worried about the one that doesn't qualify for it anyway. Or at least a blanket approach 2, like we should let, along the corridor, let them try SB 79. I mean, I think there's a lot of discussion about, we should let.
That's what I said.
Right.
It's like letting the quarter mile go, but protecting the half where there's R1 at risk.
For option
2.
For approach 2, pending the scalpel of approach 3.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I don't want to say all three of these stations, the whole half mile.
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying quarter mile gets intensified, half mile doesn't.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then my second thing, I don't even need to amend the motion, but just a point is, when we're doing the shifting of density in approach 3, whenever you find 20 more staff to do it, I would like to see, like, not just paper increases in density when we're shifting out to somewhere else, but actual increases in density. So like up to the limit of 200%. Like if we're taking from, R1 neighborhoods, I don't want to just say, oh, we're raising it to roughly the density it already was pre-SB 79 or using a non-SB 79 pathway. I think we should go where we want housing near the transit. I think we should really go for it. And that's going to help us do that shifting. So
That's going to happen.
yeah, I think we should go big in places where in the commercial zone.
Well, Jake, if we're transferring units, for example, from Bergamot to downtown, we'd have to upzone downtown to accommodate those units.
Yeah, well, and that's true.
Can I ask a question? For the purpose of the motion, can I ask a question? Again, I don't want to get into 14A, but I want to stress that what's going to happen in 14A is we're going to have a conversation about 30 DU in R1. And so I'm curious for you whether that is a move in the direction that you're trying to go, because we could reference finding ways to preserve the form of R1, but getting to the density that SB 79 amends. That would be very friendly to me, obviously, because I've got 14A pending, and I assume it would be friendly. It means density inside the R1 form. It's what I'm proposing later, but I can't talk about now. Okay. And I'm saying, without endorsing what I'm saying, are you asking us to figure out creative ways to go to 30 DU and R1? Because I think we should.
More what I'm asking is like, I'll use some simple numbers. Let's say there's a commercial parcel. Under current zoning, it can allow 15 units if it was to become housing. Under SB 79, it could actually only allow 10 because we're actually exceeding SB 79 in certain commercial parcels.
Right.
We could move 5 onto that, but that effectively does nothing. What I'm saying is when we move, we actually add that 5 to the 15 instead of adding it to the 10.
Oh, I don't know that counts, though.
I mean, I'm saying he wants to get, I mean, and I tend to agree.
I do
That's where we
too.
want it. So he's saying incentivize it with more density, and maybe that cracks the nut of why isn't there those type of developments happening?
Exactly.
So let's study the feasibility of doing that. Let's study the legality of doing that and getting credit for it.
Well, I have a question as part of, and I think all is going to get wrapped up.
Okay.
These are issues I think that will get incorporated into our TOD alternative plan.
Correct.
Right. Is the question is like, say we transferred from Bergamot to downtown. Okay, great. We've done that transfer. But I want to understand, doesn't downtown, if we're building housing with an inclusionary set aside, already have unlimited height and density under current zoning?
It's not unlimited necessarily. I mean, the extension of additional height would need to be tied to like the density bonus, but yeah, we are seeing significantly higher buildings in our zone.
We have 200 plus 3 over 200 foot high.
Yes, but it's
So
through
how
the
much more
density
can we
bonus
do there?
waiver. Yeah.
That's, I think, what you're trying to understand is, okay, within the transfer here, and this is, I think it's very important for this study to actually define for us, is will there be any net new units?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably more helpful, we're not trying to figure out the details of it. I think we hear, obviously, the motion is the interest in the approach 3, do the approach 2, to buy time to do, approach 3. I think these are a part of all of these debates, without that, it's really very speculative. There's a lot of rules around shifting from a Bergamot to a downtown. We don't even know if downtown has the capacity to take on all that, There are limits to the shifting. You can't just take all of it. There's a 200% cap, right, on how much sites can absorb and that sort of thing. So, I mean, we honestly would have to go site by site and work through those kinds of details. That would be what happens in the approach 3 realm. Yep.
Until 2030.
Yeah.
My comment was more not to get the answer now, but to inform the TOD alternative plan report that we're going to be putting together. So can we, any other questions? Oh, yes, sir. Commissioner Chaco.
I generally support the ideas that were suggested, but I do have a couple of follow-up questions. With approach 2, while I generally can support the idea of excluding sites that are in the quarter-mile to half-mile range, I want to make sure that's not too blanket, and that if there are sites, I don't know for a fact, but if there are sites within that area that actually do have capacity and don't cause gentrification concerns, they shouldn't be excluded if they can be identified reasonably easily.
We agree. That's friendly.
Right. Then with regard to, and that's so much for approach 2. As far as approach 3 is concerned, I know there was some discussion about this, but I do think we should explore specifically after getting clarification from HCD about allowing for transfer within zones, not necessarily just between zones. Because I think there is potentially a lot of interest there. I think the Bergamot Station was a good example. So I'd like that to be a particular focus. And then lastly, I think picking up what Commissioner Wasserman had mentioned, when we're transferring to zones or sites, I do want to make sure that there's some level of feasibility about whether it's actually a meaningful transfer.
Can I just ask for the purposes of the motion? Yeah, for the purposes of the motion, are you asking to explore the interparcel transfer of density idea within zones? Yes. That would be friendly to me. I think it's friendly to Leslie. Yeah.
Yes, I am asking specifically for that.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
That gets to your Bergamot situation of putting the density on north of Olympic.
Yeah.
Commissioner Reese.
I just have to ask, sorry, I'm a little slow on this. We keep talking about transferring stuff from Bergamot to downtown. Is that a serious conversation, or it's just a hypothetical?
It's all hypothetical. Hypothetical.
For the members of the public who may be confused, this was labeled as Bergamot, but Bergamot, that's about the station location. It includes the Bergamot area, which we want to grow, and it also includes part of Pico, which we want to protect. And so I think we're using Bergamot really imprecisely, and we should probably stop.
Well, and it's a place where we want to put density in certain spots. Okay. So I'm
Right.
just wondering. We're on the same page.
Right.
Okay.
Can I add one more?
One more.
So I just want to pick up on one other comment that was made, which was the notion that SB 79 does contain some built-in anti-displacement provisions because of exclusion of rent-controlled properties. So I want to make sure that is also considered, and that we don't, because I think part of the question here is when we talk about transfer of development rights, if it's done through zoning, I'm wondering whether, like particularly with regard to historic sites, where there is transfer of development rights as an incentive for preservation, that they don't lose that ability to do so.
That's a good corrective to make the study precise. Can we just say, can we we call the question and do a voice vote on what we all just said?
Why don't we just vote? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, you're going to be voting on agreeing to send, to draft a recommended action to council. Who would be drafting that recommended action is undetermined.
I think we are.
Okay, Sean and Leslie would be drafting a recommended action.
What? Commissioner Reese has a question.
Why are we doing it?
Versus whom?
Staff.
Well, that's a thought.
I mean, this is a planning commission. We come here to give recommendations to council. We've made our recommendation. And since when is it our responsibility to write the letter and send it?
I don't mind doing it, really.
I'm happy to volunteer my
I think
time to staff to help provide a letter for our chair to sign. But I'm available.
I'm happy. Well, I think part of it is that we want to spur the conversation at the council level, which is so far it hasn't been. They haven't asked to
I don't
hear
mind
this
writing
yet.
it, but Sean and I have opposite writing styles, so you need to know that.
We'll help.
You know, AI
Oh, for the short
has been
style.
a wonder
think
for
so.
letter writing.
It really has.
I think to be clear, again, staff has received no direction from council to do anything with respect to this bill, right?
Yeah.
You know, and
We'll
to
do
the
it.
extent
We'll do it.
This informational session was, a request from the commission. That's what it is. It was, no action was, it was really at the choice of the commission. And so the letter appropriately should come from the commission. This is you are the body making the recommendation to the city council. We're of course here to support. I'm not saying you're writing it yourself. We're always happy to support, drafting a letter or what have you. But, hope that answers your
May I
question.
suggest, I think Leslie and I are happy to work on it if the commission is comfortable with it. What we would need is some assistance in getting it sent as a transmission from the commission to the council so that it appears in the appropriate form and that our chair has an opportunity in the ways that matters are brought to the council's attention as a formal thing. Like this is not us asking for a 16 item or giving public comment. This is us actually sending a formal report to the council to be placed in front of it. And if if the city attorney says it's an information item and not a agenda item, that's above our pay grade. But this is going to be a formal letter signed by the chair from the commission to council's attention.
No, absolutely. We can work with the city manager's office on figuring that out. I will say, there are commissions who have asked to be agendized to make a presentation to the council. That is an option, if you're interested in doing that. To take a vote on that tonight, but if it's the letter, we're more than happy to figure out a way that it shows up on an agenda.
Okay, I started this controversy and I apologize because I did not realize this was an agenda item that we specifically put on here and that it's that through a normal course of action. And I thought this was a normal course of action project. So I apologize for that attitude.
Wait, Jim, I just realized I have 2 grad students here.
What the heck are they doing anyways?
All right, let's vote.
Okay, so the motion would be for Commissioner Lambert and Commissioner Landris to work on a letter codifying the motion to, I'm paraphrasing.
Well, the motion is the recommendation, and that is part of, we'll work with you on the letter. Yeah.
Great. Then I will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert?
Yes.
Commissioner Landris?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Chaco?
Yes.
Chair Hamilton?
Yes.
Can I say one quick thing for the record? No. I was thrilled. Mr. Kelso is still here. Mr. Gilbert had to go. Last time when we did 1123, we had no representatives of anybody who was interested in doing any building. It was very helpful to have their comments informing our conversation. And I want to say that we do better work when we hear from a wide variety of stakeholders in this conversation. And I thank them for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks.
Along with everybody else, but to that point.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Okay, I will say we take a 10-minute break or 5-minute break. Okay, 7-minute break. We'll be back at 8:37.
Can you stay or you gotta go?
I'm gonna have to. I'm running on fumes.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, I've been traveling for 2 days.
This shouldn't be, did you read what I wrote at all?
I did actually. I mean, I didn't read it.
No, I didn't expect.
I read your summary and your conclusion.
Right.
Yeah.
So, anything you want me to do, I'm gonna
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Commissioner Landers, are you ready?
I am, sir.
I'm
all right.
going to request that you try to keep your presentation brief.
I only have 9 slides, and one of them is the title slide.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a challenge from Commissioner Fresco. So, yeah, I didn't get to sit in the big chair during COVID, so I'm taking the podium before I go. Hopefully, folks have read at least the very brief version of the plan that I am proposing, which was an op-ed on Monday. But it's I'm going to give you the core ideas here, and my request of the commission, this is where we're going, is that you endorse the idea, 1, that the city council should define missing middle housing, and 2, explore options for pursuing it, including but not limited to the ideas that I'm about to present. So it's essentially what I'm hoping we can talk about, and I'm going to focus on, is here are some options that might get us to projects that pencil. They do not conflict with SB 79. They do not conflict with SB 1123. They just pencil better in certain areas. So here we go. I went too fast. All right, so first conversation, and this is something that many of us have been talking about for longer than I've been on the commission, which is that there are a lot of people missing from Santa Monica housing. If you look at typical incomes, people like a firefighter and a teacher, a police officer and a spouse, a nurse raising kids, these folks do not qualify by their income generally for LIHTC housing. They cannot afford the kinds of single-family residences or even most townhomes that are available in Santa Monica, and we do not really have a working program to get them housed. We have tried through our moderate rate housing overlay. Nobody's building to it. We've tried through our community assembly congregational affordable housing program. Nobody's building to it. So I decided after our last meeting where we were talking about SB 1123 to say, okay, well, is there a program that would work? And if so, what would it look like? What it looks like is the cottage court. We're talking about 6 or 7 detached cottages around a shared courtyard, 850 square feet each, 28 to 30 feet. In this format, you get R3 construction, even in R2 or I believe in R1, through the cottage court approach because of the way the courtyard works and the doors work. You get a unified street facade, which preserves neighborhood scale, and you get at least 1 deed-restricted unit at 200% AMI, which I'm calling the workforce covenant. And we're asking, essentially, I'm asking you to support the idea that council should explore this number. Again, sorry, this is the form again. We're talking about type 5A wood frame. We're talking about just something that pencils. This is something that pencils on a 7,500 square foot R2 lot. You've got 3.4 million cash at completion, and over 30 years, you're doing pretty well. So again, this is the first idea. We established the cottage court as a permitted building form across every pathway where missing middle housing belongs, namely R1, R2, the moderate income housing overlay, and our community assembly parcels, which, for the record, we did in Santa Monica before the state passed SB4. We were there first. This requires 8 policy updates. I'm going to keep going. It means setting the density at 1 per 800 square feet, which gets us 30 DU, which is SB 79 compliant. It asks for a AHPP tiered fee trade, which means that for every 200% AMI workforce covenant you apply to a unit, you get a discount on your AHPP fee, which, as far as I can tell, still applies above 2 units because council repealed what it passed last year and hasn't actually passed it again. I'm asking to disaggregate the transportation fee. I think this is something we need to do anyway. Specifically, we are charging everybody, including buildings that have no parking, for vehicle impacts. I'm not sure that's going to hold up on a challenge. So we need to have an impact fee that is per parking space for cars, and then a multimodal impact fee that is per bedroom. We need pre-approved plans. We keep talking about it. We need 90-day ministerial review. That's getting to be a standard. If we can do this courtyard plan, we can get the R3 building code classification with no work, which saves 10% on hard costs. I'm asking for a revolving capital fund or a rotating capital pool, which in certain cases, certain edge cases, would be necessary to help a project convert from project financing to permanent financing. You could do this with a low interest rate loan that repays itself over the lifetime of the covenant, over 55 years, and would simply bridge that gap and get us that housing. You could allow we need to allow lot consolidation via the existing courtyard exception that I mentioned. And then lastly, the question of the cottage court form, I'm going very abbreviated here, but this idea that you can do the IRC or the CRC in California, AB6 is a statewide exploration of bringing that building code into R2 on a permanent basis. A number of states have already done it and have experienced zero negative safety events. I want to highlight how well this works as a replacement for our community assembly pathway, our congregations. We would do the 50% market rate that we talked about before, do 30% workforce sale at 200% AMI, and we could keep 20% affordable rental at 80% AMI from the original idea. What this does is it asks congregations to create community land trusts. They can set up 501c3s that they control, but the land stays in tax-exempt hands and the improvements go. And to people who are concerned about replacement parking, based on the numbers in what I posted, the net profit to the congregation is going to help pay for the replacement parking if you want to buy parking passes or however you want to do it. So what we would need is to create an alternative pathway to compliance for the Section 931, 196 program that we have in place. We would create a partner waiver for the nonprofit developer that partners with the congregation just to operate. We don't have to get into the details here. It needs to be studied. And we need to create community land trust ground lease standards to make this pretty straightforward. What do we get if we do it? My math says we get about 150 cottages out of R1 and R2 owner occupants, like Mr. Kelso potentially could do this on his property. Great. Fantastic if we get it to go. I think if there are a number of parcels where you could do family assemblies, where you have adjacent parcel assemblies, where you could get another 20 to 40 cottages. And then the really exciting thing could be exploring the community assembly parcels, because you could get another 120 to 160 cottages. So that is my presentation. You can read it in great detail, all the barriers, but those are the options. And I'm happy to take questions.
Can I ask a quick clarification on the last slide?
Yeah, sure.
Is that a citywide estimate that you did?
Yes.
Okay.
Citywide, looked everywhere, interacted with 1123, interacted with SB9, interacted with current code as it exists. This pencils at this rate based, and there's a letter from, I should say, there's a letter from AIA Los Angeles in the public comment. Will Wright, who wrote the letter, also stress tested my drafts, and I'm grateful to him for doing that. He made some very good points about risk insurance and other things. And also an architect in San Francisco named Mason Kirby also took a run at it. And so this has been reviewed by two non-Santa Monica architects.
All right. So we'll first have commissioner questions, and I'm going to go from right to left. So starting there with
Sorry,
Mr.
it was 8
Fresco.
minutes. It's a good thing you didn't bet. So my question is, when I talk to architects who work in Santa Monica, they say that it costs $600 a square foot and not $475 or $300. So would it still pencil out?
There's stress tests. We need to study it, but moving to this different, I think a lot of the conversation is based on the CBC instead of the CRC. The R3 building, that is the R3 building standard, the type 5A. If you can do that, and you can save a lot of money. So if I may, I think the question is not whether we want to debate the construction costs. It's whether we want to study them and whether it's worth the effort to really find out what it is. I did my best research. I think and I have stress tests in the document. I could be wrong. Am I wrong by a factor of 2? I don't think so, but we need the study to find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lambert.
Well, Sean and I have been over this many times. I think your construction costs are low and you think mine are high. So somewhere in the middle may be the truth, or, we really need to do tests. I did a cost analysis of 1123 units. And came up very different from his. I just wanted to point out to you that these are for sale units, right?
Not necessarily.
Except for the affordable.
It's sale or rent at the affordable rate.
Because as I told you, for sales, fee simple are exempt from AHPP.
Not at 5, not 5, not 6, not 7.
No, they are, because they're single-family homes. Our SB 1123 projects are fee simple.
These are not being sold. These are, you can read.
Well,
it's
just
not,
keep that in mind. And then I've also talked to you about the idea of
that makes it pencil more, not less, by the way.
Yeah, no, the insurance is less. The idea of a church with no development experience building anything scares the willies out of me.
I know a few that are doing it.
Well, that's good. You know the good ones. Because I think I told you years ago, HUD had that experience with church-developed properties, and it was a nightmare, and they never let it happen again.
So I want to stress, nonprofit development partner waiver, you can require the congregation to have a qualified partner.
I would think that'd be a good idea.
Like that, yeah.
And also in terms of property management, I don't think you can expect the church board to be managing the units or the church staff.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. And what you have done is unbelievable. I mean, it really is a master's thesis. So impressed.
Commissioner Wasserman.
Sean and I know of a religious institution that's building affordable housing.
We do.
Not in Santa Monica. My question is basically just the same as the others, but we had an emergency 1123 ordinance that let, what was it, 1.5 FAR and standards more than, what did you have, like 0.8 something, and that didn't generate anything. Why? Yeah. How's this going to pencil if that didn't?
So there's a program. So I'm so glad you asked, Commissioner Wasserman. There is a program in Portland so first of all, what the emergency ordinance did was it went straight to that FAR on a much larger square footage for a unit. There's an ordinance and I think this was a mistake. Because there's an ordinance that is working in Portland that's actually producing housing where the FAR ratchets with the unit count. So if you have a single family home, it's a 0.5 FAR. The minute you add the second unit, you get a 25, I think you go to 0.7 FAR. The third unit, you go to 0.9. I'm making these numbers up. You can look it up. But the point is that you ratchet with the density, and that incentivizes the unit at its size, and you're not giving, because otherwise you're basically saying just build big, and the only way that project pencils is if you don't build to the FAR, you build a smaller number of units and sell them for more money, which doesn't get us what we need.
Yeah, I also have a couple of questions, Commissioner Landris. I'm just curious with regard to the definition of missing middle.
Yeah.
There's a component that speaks to the type of development, and there's a component that speaks to an income range.
Right.
And in your the item that you put on the agenda, you've asked that the council define it. I'm just curious whether there isn't room for actually having some more analysis to really fine-tune that definition, or do you feel like it's sufficiently defined the way you've characterized it?
So I drafted a definition in my memo, which you can take a look at. I think it's a pretty solid definition. I didn't put it in this PowerPoint because it's a lot of words on a screen. The original, so it's funny, we studied their work. When we were doing the housing element, it was actually Opticos that did the work that said we needed to raise our threshold for HPP and other things. They were the ones who took us from like 3 to 5 or 6. to 5. That was a statewide program we were part of that pilot thing. Anyway, Daniel Powerlek at Opticos came up with the term missing middle housing in 2010. And for him, and he's talked about this a lot, he defines it as a form that yields housing that is affordable to workforce. So it's not, missing middle is not 200% AMI housing. Missing middle is housing that looks like a sizable R1 home that has the density in it, that has the right number of units to be affordable to people who are making, let's say, 150 to 250% of AMI. Right. But the form drives the affordability, not the other way around.
Understood. But with regard to the income range, I think you've called it 120 to 200%.
Yeah.
Since AMI is a regional number.
Yes.
Is there not some room for fine-tuning it for Santa Monica?
I agree there is. My numbers are based on Santa Monica numbers. So I took the LA County, the official LA County AMI and stress tested it with Santa Monica AMI. But I agree with you. It might be that the council needs to define missing middle as this program is aiming at 223% of LA County AMI or whatever, 237. I don't know.
But the only thing is, since what I would like to suggest is that council give a conceptual direction.
Yes.
And allow some further analysis to really fine tune the definition.
What I'm asking, right. I mean, I don't know if we have public comment, but like my motion eventually would be, or somebody's motion, if they're willing, is to similarly write to council, request that they define it, offer the memo and the plan as sort of exhibit A in the request, and ask them to consider feasibility studies to explore what implementing it at Santa Monica would mean.
All right.
Yeah.
The revolving capital idea. Do you have a ballpark sense of what the magnitude of that is for something like this to work?
It's in the document. It's not huge, but there are edge cases where it's not even about making the project pencil as a project. It's about having getting the financing, converting your project financing from project financing to permanent financing, and not being able to secure that. So it's the bridge loan that enables that transformation. Those happen on edge cases where where maybe there's 2 units going to 200% AMI instead of just the one, where there's just a little bit more risk. And you could literally finance it with paying out of the rent or the sale that you get, right? It could be paid back over a longer period of time, but it's easily collateralized to ensure repayment.
Right. No,
Does that help?
I was just trying to get a sense of what the budgetary impact of the city might be.
Oh.
How significant would that be?
I mean, in the low millions, and I think you could collateralize it out of existing fund. I mean, I think you would have to study it and figure out what your outflow is and your inflow looks like, but you might be able to use a fund that is already existing if you can legally put it to work that way.
Right.
I don't think it would require a special budget allocation, is my point.
So there are a lot of very interesting components to the proposal that also makes me think, I wonder whether some of those, if not all, at least some of those should have a wider application. I think you hinted at that with regard to the transportation fee. So is that something, I mean, have you thought about that, or do you think that doing that would dilute the strength of this?
No, I think, so the issue is that everything that we're talking about doing, the more expansive we are with it, the more people it helps, right? You look at something like AB 130, right, which waives CEQA for a lot of infill projects. That rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if we can, I'm not asking to deal with the transportation impact fee just for this. It's not opt in and you get the fee deal. Everybody should get that fee deal, right? We shouldn't be charging no parking projects for parking impacts. That's not right. And if somebody chose to, I mean, I hate to say it, but if somebody chose to litigate that, Supreme Court and appellate court precedent would probably succeed on that, right? That there's a trade-off though. We raise the parking impact fee. It's going to make parking more expensive, but it also makes it clearer the choice to have parking. And then the cost it's far more transparent and the market will like it better.
All right. My last question. Since we all know that there's lots of priority projects going on right now, what in your mind is the urgency of this and the extent to which it can be done so that we take the right amount of time to do it right?
Yeah. So, right. That's the urgency.
It's
We
not
got to
gonna
get
get
this done
done
before
before
you
you go.
My recommendation, and if somebody wants to work it into the motion, that would be fine. I have discussed this with staff, is that council, as soon as possible, ought to give this direction, but the scope of the work ought to dovetail with the preparation for the next housing cycle. So, because this is the kind of program that could be, if things went quickly, Nexus study on the impact fee is going to take time. Some of this is going to take time. Council, this is probably $500,000 worth of research consulting just to do the feasibility studies and get the Nexus study. But ultimately, it's now 2026. Staff is going to start working on the housing element. This would dovetail very nicely with it. And so what we could try sooner, we try sooner, but ultimately what's the hard date? The hard date is that we have the studies done in time to bake it into the next housing element.
Great, thank you.
I just have a quick question. I would discourage using the median income of Santa Monica because that defines the problem. I mean, only people with a certain income can afford to live here.
Well, yes and no. The issue is who can, if we go back to the slide.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
I would encourage you, and not necessarily use these numbers precisely, look at what teachers make.
Well, that's my point. Yeah.
And there it is.
I did. And that's the thing. So your Santa Monica's 200% AMI is like
213.
Yeah, it's 213, whereas countywide it's like 2. So
No, that is it.
213 is LA.
It's 106 or 7 or whatever countywide. So it'd be 213.
Be 213,
Right.
exactly. So
That's for 4 people.
well, so I looked at those numbers because I didn't assume that you have to look at that. Those numbers are 2 incomes, two incomes, one income, right? So
Teachers normally do make, my daughter doesn't, but most teachers make more than that in Santa Monica.
eventually,
Well, after a couple of years.
yeah,
And then-
and then hopefully they can move out of the lovely 850 square foot garden apartment into the townhome that they've been working hard to get, and then they can go. Remember Councilmember Davis's whole thing about the starter unit, and then moving through, staying in Santa Monica as
Do you
your
check
family
that
grows.
teacher salary?
That's
That's
like
really,
a
really
starter.
low.
That's a very low
Yeah.
starting salary. Yeah, but that's 162. So there's room.
Right. I'm glad you did that because I'm concerned about using the median income now because there are a lot of rich people here. And that's when we're, and we're actually looking at working people who frankly, I don't think will be able to afford 1123 units. So this is great.
Bring that salary up to 100 and it's still under the 200.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, since none of this is going to be discretionary approval, CEQA doesn't apply anyway.
Correct. But it's opt-in. It's opt-in. And AB 130 takes care of it anyway.
Yeah, but it doesn't go to, there's no discretionary decision, so there's no CEQA in it.
Great.
It's just a point. Thank you so much.
Are there any more questions? Is there any discussion?
Is there public comment? Fill out a chit. Wait, you got to fill out a chit.
So,
To hear the late chit for 1 minute.
well, while we're waiting, any other questions or we're all good?
I mean, may I?
Yes.
I want to thank Ross and Ethan for sort of making this easy to do. We had a long conversation about it. I'm just curious, with no commitment, what staff thinks.
Staff has no opinion on this at the moment. We are a neutral body over here.
All right, we have one speaker, Scott Kelso.
Yes. Thank you.
2 minutes.
And thank you. It's inspirational what you're.
And just so you know, you'll have 2 minutes and you'll hear the.
I'll make it succinct. To keep the cost of construction down, there, if you look at Copenhagen or Ontario, beautiful modular prefab construction brings that down considerably with LEED Platinum compliance. And if the city wants to be environmentally in the future, that's the way to go. And, you know, the starter home with a modular concept, if you can put 7 cottage units on a 7,500 square foot lot, which is I happen to own, it's inspiring. And I just encourage everybody here to pay attention to his proposal, because I think that may be a way out of this. You know, and I'll wait for the dust to settle, find out how you all decide, but thank you very much for hearing my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelso. Commissioner Fresco.
I just wanted to point out, just for the fun of it, that this is actually, of course, going back to the original affordable home building model of courtyard housing. I mean, that was how it started in the 30s, but, you know, just saying.
I have one more sort of question / comment, Sean. So, as I understood, the proposal involves having 1 or 2 of a development of 6 to 7 units as ones that would be deed restricted for affordability within that defined range. The other components of these projects would not necessarily meet the missing middle income range, correct? While I understand that that's inevitable and necessary, I think it's important for this kind of an effort to be totally transparent about that, because it often does get misunderstood.
I think can I see your point and raise it, right? Mr. Kelso said it earlier. He said what he would do if he had, you know, all the money in the world is build a beautiful single family home and sell it. And limit it, right? So the logical thing for somebody to do today with an R1 property is to sell it and walk away. So in the memo, you will see that there were multiple cases. There's the case of the person who wants to redevelop their own property and then live in it, right? Versus the person who wants to redevelop it, sell it, and walk away. Versus, you know, and how much affordability they want to guarantee across the project. Do they want to sell them affordably? Do they want to rent them affordably? So these things they pencil at different numbers, right? There's more and less profit in various versions of it, but you're absolutely right. That is part of the policy choice. What are we trading? The problem is if you demand, we see this in LIHTC housing all the time. If you demand too much affordability, the project stops penciling. But I think one of the key benefits, and Commissioner Fresco alluded to this in her comment about the historicity of it, is that an 850 square foot garden apartment will not sell for the same price as a 1,500 square foot townhouse. And so even the ones that are not deed restricted will be more affordable on the market and will provide housing diversity that we need.
Form-based affordability.
All right. Commissioner Wasserman.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that gives me pause is on page 9, every future action that extends these concessions to SB 9 or SB 1123 projects, yada, yada, eliminates the program's affordability production. The ordinance language must prohibit this explicitly. Like, I understand the logic. I think I would rather see missing middle be defined, legalized, and then separately we come up with some sort of workforce housing density bonus like program that can stack on top of that. I mean, the Portland one is a good model. It doesn't require the on-site affordable. I mean, one, I think this is what a study would look at. I think it would tank the penciling. But I think there's also like a lot of things, I mean, beyond SB 9 and SB 1123, the way you identified last session that, like, you know, shared driveways and things like that we should just get rid of or allow, other restrictions like that we should just get rid of anyway. And I don't want to like hold hostage projects that are using those pathways because they aren't pursuing this courtyard affordable program, they have to do this somewhat onerous bad thing that we don't want to keep around anyway?
If I may, I mean, I agree with you, right? Like part of what this is saying is, at the moment, this is a pathway that works, that gets the housing that is affordable. If there are other pathways, we should take them. And as the state, right, this works as long as the state doesn't step in and create a statewide, a garden apartment program that we all have to sign up for, right? So absolutely shared drive, like absolutely those things need to be studied.
Yeah.
And if they work, we take them.
Right.
The point is, my exercise was coming off of last meeting where we all said, look, there are all these different bills. Yeah. What is it that where are we trying to go? Is there a program that would get us where we're trying to go? This is a model where the benefits and the trade-offs stack to get us where we need to go. If you can find another, let's study other pathways and let's grab them, because the point is to get the housing and the housing diversity at the income diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not an exclusive.
That's wages, a lot of what I was thinking. Thanks.
Yeah.
Another clarification.
Yeah.
So we'd heard one of the commenters, I think, on our last item, I think in response to Commissioner Wasserman's question about why isn't development happening on Colorado, about the fact that the zone capacity has affected the land price. Is that something that you factored into your evaluation?
Well, I factored in what the current zoning is and what the current programs, what current available programs are and what current land prices are. So in the memo, you will see that I'm not using a universe of all parcels in Santa Monica. I'm using a unit of the parcels in Santa Monica. I'm excluding, I have tenancy protections, right? The point is, within that subunit, those land values are such that this would be appealing. But if the land value is too high, this doesn't pencil, right? No matter what you do. Yeah.
I just wanted to second that. Focusing on R2 is a really good idea. Trying to squeeze this into R1 with the land prices being what they are is very, very difficult. I sort of wonder why 1123 developers aren't looking at R2. I mean, that's like the logical place to go. You can build more units, get a density bonus. I mean, really, R1 is very restrictive in terms of land costs.
So what my research showed is not every landowner is the same. I mean, it's obvious, but you could have a long-term landowner in R1 who has, and it actually is a difference whether they bought it 20 years ago or 30 years ago. That actually makes a difference in the research. But if they bought it 30 years ago and they have a 30-year-old property tax base, that creates a different calculus than if they bought it last week. And there's another different calculus, which is Prop 19, because it pencils very differently if it's Gen 1 that's doing the redevelopment or Gen 2 that's doing the redevelopment, because of what happens to the property tax base when you do the intergenerational transfer under Prop 19. So this goes to the feasibility stress tests, but one of the things, and in my work over the weekend and following up on the SB 79 staff report, right? Like, I initially thought this could be a large landowner project, right? Like, I thought, could this model go to Santa Monica Business Park? Could it go to some of the large lots? It doesn't, to be honest. It just doesn't. But it works for the congregations and the community assembly, right? It works for the lot ties in R2, like family, like putting those units together. So you're asking exactly the right question, because those are the things we need to study to be able to figure out the right approach. And we may find that there are other tools that we can use, to Commissioner Wasserman's point, that get us to that outcome.
I just have one final question.
All right.
And it's somewhat related. Is the City Council still expecting us to look at SB 1123 affordability?
I think there is still direction for us to
Okay.
look at local implementation of SB 1120.
Can I actually want to run what I did by your consultant, because we don't agree on anything. And he's probably right. So once I do that, can we distribute that to the commission? I asked Ethan, it's probably not in a form yet to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, when we received it, it was just too late to agendize
That's no
it.
pro- no
so
problem.
we could do it at a future date.
Or even just send it out.
Yeah, we could do that as well.
But I really want to run it by Sean's person, yeah. Okay.
All right, so does anybody want to suggest a motion?
So ultimately, I think what the vote could, or the consideration could be is, does the commission vote to essentially forward this along to council? Similarly, how you guys voted for the SB 79, you could handle this similarly, where you could elect Sean to even go represent the commission if you would like.
I move that. I also suggest you send them your PowerPoint.
Okay.
That helped enormously.
I will include.
I suggest bullet points over paragraphs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the PowerPoint was great.
Yeah, because then, yeah, it was succinct.
I mean, now it can be, well, Ethan posted it already, so the public can see.
So I moved to do what Ross suggested, which is send this to council with a recommendation.
A second. Okay.
Friendly and.
I moved.
I know, I'm asking a question.
Okay.
I was really clear, and I want to be respectful of Commissioner Wasserman's point. What you're recommending is what this says, that the council do the definition work, right? Not that you adopt this definition wholesale, that we're recommending the council make a policy decision, and using the memo that I wrote and anything anybody else wants to submit, start the process. Is that what you're recommending? Or do you want to be more?
Yes, and I think it's also good to point out what you did, and that is that missing middle means two different things. One is it means the income and it means the scale.
Right, which is what I have.
Exactly, we should point that out.
But if I may, I would also suggest that the council's direction does leave some room for staff to further analyze the ranges, et cetera.
I think ultimately what would happen is if the council agreed with this, direction, they would then inform staff to go and do this work, which would then go through the normal planning process.
That's right.
Which you are the first stop of that process. So this would ultimately come back to you to help fine tune that before ultimately we brought any policy, codification to council.
And I'll come back to the podium anytime after I finish serving on the commission.
You love it, I know. Okay.
You'll have only 2 minutes.
Good luck.
No, Ross will make the staff report and throw to me.
So was there a second?
There was.
There was a second, Mr. President.
Sorry.
All right. Okay, great. So we will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Fresco?
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert?
Yes.
Commissioner Landris?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
Commissioner Wasserman? Yes. And Vice Chair Chaco?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Good job.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank
Get
you.
those letters written. I'll just do 14B really fast. They had the program downtown. There was an article about it in SMDP. The mayor was there. Councilmember Negrete was there. It was on revitalizing downtown, and this was a PowerPoint from that day that was made available to the people who were in the mix, and I just thought it was excellent. And so I sent it to staff about a month and a half ago, and it got agendized now. So I want a waterfall like Greenville, South Carolina has. I just need to say that, but I just thought folks would enjoy looking at the principles. And I thought to Commissioner Wasserman's point about, to his expertise on transportation, one of the things that was said at this that I hadn't thought about before is that it's not just about the place, that the place be attractive. It's that the journey to and from needs to be seamless and compelling. And I hope that we continue to think about that. And I think the person who did this presentation really stressed that. It's not like, it's when you wake up in the morning and you're not in Santa Monica and you choose to go to Santa Monica, like, what does that experience look like? So I thought that was pretty cool.
Thank you, Commissioner Landris. And with that, I think we're ready to adjourn at 9:17.
I'll write you off in Budapest. Is that a